Probably the oddity here is a lot of people are used to hearing about Muramasa, but he only has the 2 arts cards instead of 3, like maybe a lot of people were hoping. But he's still fine. Again, he gets basically a rainbow buff here to all of his card types. It's 50% each, which is just strong out of the outset. Most units that get a buff like this, it's only 30%. A lot of units will have something like that, and it'll be 3 turn duration. He doesn't have that, but most of those units only get it for 1 card type, maybe 2. He's got it for all 3. On top of that, he's also got Star Absorption and Star Bomb in the same skill, so you're getting the stars and soaking the stars at the same time, which is really, really good. You typically want your arts unit soaking the stars anyways, because that's going to help them loop, that's going to help them crit. It's really going to be a nice thing for them. Again, his second skill here is ignores invincibility for 1 turn. That already is just strong. And then he also increases his own crit damage against anyone that has evasion or invincibility for 1 turn. So basically he gets an extra 100% crit damage against those people at rank 10. Increases his own critical star generation rate for 3 turns by 100%. Again, that's the same as Cast Gill's modifier. Don't expect it to generate nearly as much stars, but it will generate quite a few. And increase own critical damage for 3 turns just naturally by 100%. So yes, if the target is dodging, he gets 200% crit damage. Still think Muramasa doesn't do too much now? Like, this is one of those units where I think I could strip out something from every single one of their skills and they would still be OP. I'm gonna look at here his 3rd skill. It is a 50% charge skill, and then also grants him Blaze buff, which is actually sort of the predecessor to Koyanskaya's skill with her middle skill. And basically what it does, it gives him 50% charge, and then whenever he hits when normal attacking, he also gets 10% charge just from that. So it's maybe derivative of like something with Dioscuri, how, you know, like their quick cards will give 10% charge when attacking. Instead, it's just all of his cards, because why the fuck not? So again, it's another thing where they just went a little bit too far, but it's not crazy in the grand scheme of things, because a lot of the times you're just going to be looping with him and yeet everything. But then when you actually get into a challenge environment, especially with that 2nd skill that he has, it starts getting dumb. He starts getting really, really capable of doing some insane stuff. And the other thing to point out here, guys, you look at all his skill cooldowns and they're all lower. They're all 6 or lower, basically. So they're all good. He gets magic resistance B, territory creation A for 10% more arts performance. Appreciating the aesthetics of a sword, which is again party crit damage while he's on the field. And then ominous present head, which is again a extra 20% damage power mod against king enemies. So yeah, I've seen people before say that he has no niche and that's what keeps him down. Those people are wrong. He actually just has sovereign niche and just kills everybody that has that trait. So even harder. His Noble Phantasm here is a 3-hit, which again, some people are going to be like, oh, whoa, that's not that much. If you're going to say that's not that much, remember, Space Ishtar is the same. She also has a 50% charge skill. So ask yourself how well she loops. You pretty much have an answer with Muramasa. It increases his own NP damage by 10% for 3 turns activating first. So it is a stacking effect that would get stronger in scalability with Oberon. He also removes all enemies' offensive buffs, activates first. Thank God it's only offensive buffs. Oh wait, he deals damage that ignores defense buffs. And remember, he also both has invuln pierce and punishes anything that is dodging or invulning. So yeah, pretty much the only thing that gets by him is Castoria. That's it. That's the only thing. Everything else gets screwed by this. And guts, but you know, still he's going to pop off. Okay, he's gonna get rid of your enemy's ability to pop off, and then he's going to get through all of their defenses pretty much by virtue of that invuln pierce or that defense pierce. And then his overcharge effect is it increases arts performance for 3 turns, also activating first and scaling again. So really, really dumb. If you can get him to 200% charge, you get even more benefit. And yes, I've seen this actually happen. So really, really stupid. But like I said, that's Muramasa in a nutshell. His actual NP damage is not that high, but because he's an arts looper, because he works from 0, because he can handle weird makeup nodes thanks to that charge skill, he's stupid. You can take Black Grail on him sometimes. You can just sit there and carve up a challenge quest with him. That's what really makes him stand out. So I had someone asking me the other day, does he, last? Does he span the test of time? Yeah, he's still the gold standard on JP at this moment. So Super Ryan's still really strong. How hard you need his capability is up for debate. Same thing with Maid Alter. Maid Alter is still one of the hardest hitting riders. She has only been surpassed by Ozzy with his buff recently. She'll probably get some attention down the line, but when that is, I don't know. And she is a summer unit, so that's always up in the air. Semirama's still lagging a little bit behind. She can 3-turn in the Koyan Sky system, but she does need some help. Tamamo Lancer actually has had a charge skill added, and that I believe it's the 3rd skill sort of adjusted. So again, she's not in as bad of a spot as she was before, but her damage output is still relatively lacking. But given that charge skill, she can now operate in the Koyan Sky system, and that helps the damage out a lot. So that's really good for her. Ilya has had a 50% charge skill added to her over time, so she'll get a lot better as well. That'll allow her to work in the Buster system. And then Abby has just always been strong. She's always been a really good boss killer, and even she's had some adjustments as well to her charge makeups. But that's not all that's on this banner, chat. There is also Springtime Kodo strings here, which is a decent one. It's split stats, but it is, as far as craft essence go, 15% arts performance, 15% in P-Gen, and overcharge 2 stages 1 time. So depending on what you're trying to do, this can actually be really good in a short span for kind of getting going and popping off. It's not the best of craft essences, but it's not the worst, especially if you have a unit that really benefits from their overcharge. AKA the big bait. We saw a lot of people basically get baited by Muramasa and then scream really loudly when Space Ishtar came back earlier than expected on JP. You don't have to worry about that. You know it's coming. Surely that won't impact your rolling, right, chat? Obviously, Calamity Jane's been a really interesting unit over time. Not easy to get your hands on, but still intriguing in what she does. She's got buff success chance. I think a lot of people forget that, and that does make her a decent unit for that. But everyone's going to probably be focused on Space Ishtar, and understandably so. Even over time here, they have now buffed units to do more damage than Space Ishtar, to be kind of better in their respective card types than Space Ishtar. But if you have a strong Space Ishtar, you don't care. Space Ishtar has honestly been one of the best sort of hold up units over time here, as again, you have a neutral unit that just kind of handles everything pretty well. One of her biggest issues is just sort of sustainability and survivability down the stretch. That's not a big deal in an arts system where you've got Castoria covering you. I'd say basically the only weakness then would be healing, and well, again, there's other ways you can deal with that, so it's not a huge concern. She's honestly been really, really good. She's been a little bit too strong, and I think that's why you started to see them releasing units like Summer Kama, buffing units like Dante's and Mao Nobu, and that's kind of why, is they're trying to give you guys alternatives. They're trying to make her a jack of all trades, not a master of all trades like she kind of has been. Even then, that's kind of been a bit of a misnomer. Honestly, Space Ishtar has not been a master of all trades. I'd say she still is dominantly arts. You almost never want to use her as quick, and while you can use her as buster, it's not as good as just straight up using her as arts most of the time. I had issues where, people were telling me, oh, just Space Ishtar everything, just use her for every single node, just blitz this challenge quest with her. And you can do that at higher NP levels, but guys, if you're working with only an NP1, that does not work in a lot of cases. She's definitely a unit where the more copies of her you have, the more powerful she gets. And I think if you have an NP2 or higher, a lot more things open up to you. That's not me recommending you roll NP2 so much as me just warning you that yes, a lot of the people that are telling you that you can do everything with Space Ishtar typically have a higher NP level of her. They typically have grailed her. They typically have gold foed her. If you like her but just are kind of after her to help your account, understand that rolling her at a low NP level can still help her handle nodes for you, still let you kind of work on the rest of your account while you get all that running, but it's not going to be the end-all be-all solution that most people purport her to be. So just again, keep that in mind as you're rolling. If you want to roll more copies of her, go for it. Just remember, there's a lot of stuff this year that you might want to roll in the meantime. Honestly, I'm gonna say this at this point, MHX still hits ridiculously hard for a single target assassin, but her kit is weird. That has always been my gripe with her. She actually is one of the units out there that is kind of putting single target archers to shame, where her double X, MHXA, all of them kind of actually outperform most other single target archers kind of pound for pound against sabers, and that's because she has an anti-saber niche. It's really weird. I don't know why they allow that sort of thing to stand, but most of it's just because they haven't upgraded those single target archers, not due to like some sort of weird, hey, they've made her too strong type of mentality. Honestly, I think she's largely fine where she's at. She's not going to be your looper. She is going to be a little bit wonky, but if you just need raw damage and firepower, she can be your girl, especially if it's against the saber. Yagyu has been an interesting unit where over time, there was a period where he was kind of like actually a little bit better version of Lancelot. He didn't crit nearly as hard, but his NP hit harder and he had survivability. He's not really at that point anymore, I'm gonna say, mostly due to the existence of units like Hoku Saber, as well as now Lancelot getting upgrades, and then the Trung sisters and Dioscuri all being things. He's kind of struggled to find his sort of usefulness, and a big issue I would say with that is it's one turn durations on his buffs. He could be very easily capable and good for you, so don't worry too much about it. If you roll him, he can be your single target saber, but just keep in mind that he's probably not going to be your saber down the stretch. He's probably not going to be the one that's going to go the distance for you in terms of like sustainability and stuff like that. That's just the case with him. There's not very many good options for it in that regard for single target saber, but I'd say a lot of this is just he's maybe one upgrade away from being relevant and really good again, right? So he's not bad. He's still a really good quality unit, but obviously not a gotta roll in that sense. You're gonna get a new welfare, Kichi Hogan. She is an she is a quick AoE looping assassin. So a lot of people are like, oh, thank God when we got Summer Valks on JP, because they were our first arts looping assassin. They were really, really good in that regard. But you did have Kichi Hogan in that regard before that point. A lot of people have sort of compared her over time to Assassin Shisho. She's definitely a lot more fluid looper than Assassin Shisho is. She seems to be designed with that in mind. I think the big issue NA is going to have is she could be helped by having coins, and you're not going to get them early for her. So that is going to be another one of an issue there. Again, looking at Kichi, she's only got the 2 quick cards, which does mean that she's trading a quick or an arts for an extra buster here. That's going to help her hit hard though, and that's really nice for a welfare to be able to have that capability. Just kind of quickly glossing through her kit, she's got 3 turns of quick up with some hard survival there. Well, not really hard, it's kind of like soft, but it's at least 2 stacks, so it's a robust soft survival. Again, she's got basically a targetable charge of 20%. This is absolutely pivotal to helping her loop. You've kind of seen it where some of these sort of looping assassins really struggle down the stretch in certain nodes. Having the ability to have her charge skills really, really good, because hey, maybe it's on that like wave 2 refund that you're having issues. Boom, there you go, she's good. She also got critical star absorption. It's not a whole lot, but again, you don't really need a whole lot in most cases. You just need enough to actually be able to pull some away from the other units. And then her third skill here is party attack and NP gen for 3 turns each of 20% as well. So that's further going to help her looping. I think the reason you don't see her used too much over time is, again, that low charge skill and sort of NP gain based looping has kind of gone the way of the dodo a little bit now on JP, where you've got these super weird makeup nodes, and anything NP gain based has a tendency to struggle. That is why they gave Dantes the charge skill that they did, and I totally understand it. Quick is still going to have that sort of issue until we get more, I'd say, in the charge department, but still, you do have units like Summer Scotty now that can basically set you up to crit a wave down, so it makes it a lot easier for people over time. Oddly enough, she actually gets territory creation B in her passive skills, which is not something I would normally expect, but hey, they clearly wanted her singular arts card to pop off a little bit better. She has anti-archer attack damage aptitude. Again, not another good one. It's just weird, so it is what it is. She has a 7-hit AoE quick NP, and considering this is sort of half of what you would normally get with arts, that's not bad. I'm actually okay with this in this regard. She can loop. I've definitely done it with her, and she's not super bad. The problem is she's just going to need 3-3x type nodes where you have 3 enemies in the first wave, 3 enemies in the second wave, and that's going to really help her sort of get the refund that she needs to go back. She probably can make do with maybe a 2-enemy wave if you had something like an Oberon, if you had something like Fragment of 2004, sort of helping you generate a lot of refund on a certain wave. But again, remember with Quick, the big issue is hitting certain 50% breakpoints thanks to the way Scotty works. So that's going to be one of her issues over time. She does have the quick performance up for 1 turn activating first. That's going to help the refund a little bit more. But again, the fact that it's only 1 turn means you're not stacking this over time. But hey, it's a free unit, guys, so don't look the gift horse in the mouth. She can definitely be solid for you, especially if you just need a nice, decently hitting AoE assassin. And in that regard, I think she's great. Looking at the summoning campaigns here, again, yes, this is like Coup Alter's like first campaign in a hot minute, if I remember correctly here. So both him and Mabe are kind of difficult to get your hands on at certain points in time, but they can both be good. Just talking about them here real quick, guys. Mabe is again anti-male, and as a writer, I've seen a lot of people kind of shit on her because she's gotten a lot of upgrades. She's come a long way, and anti-male is really good. There are a lot of male casters basically out there that she can just absolutely dump on, even at a decently low MP level. So she's not going to be your most fluid unit. She's not going to be sitting there 3-turning for you all the time, but you can set her up to basically make her pop off. And again, with a lot of single target units, you're not so focused on getting them like, oh yeah, you must be able to 3-turn. No, instead you're like, all right, I just need to get you kind of close to 3-turning, and then you'll probably get some card luck somewhere in those first 2 turns to kind of push you over that edge. So that works for her. She also gets the charge per turn to help. So again, I think she's actually pretty solid in that regard. Coup Alter, I'm not going to say he's as necessary anymore nowadays, but damn, there's still some content where he really shines, and he is very hard to kill, very good, very strong, and he has gotten some buffs to help out his damage. So I do think he's still a excellent sort of berserker to have. When in doubt, he's kind of like a Swiss Army knife for your back line, just like Berserker. Herc, if you throw him back there, again, you're probably going to be safe because you're going to have a unit that, oh no, it's down to this last unit. I'm getting all of his cards. He's got all of his survivability. So I'm getting at least a good like 2 to 3 turns there out of him and able to really put some hurt on the enemy in that regard. Herc is going to last probably a lot longer than him. Herc can definitely pop off a little bit better, I'd say, thanks to the guts procs now. But Coup is still a very adequate replacement and can hit very hard, especially a lot more on the, I'd say, NP side of things than maybe Herc. But a lot of that is going to come down to guts procs and stuff like that. So I think Herc also in general has a much harder time getting to his NP than say a Coup will. Coup does tend to have a little bit better NP gen for that sort of thing to be the case. Again, she's our first single target Avenger in a hot minute on NA. She's definitely a unit that when she came out, I'd say a lot of people, honestly, in weird ways, kind of overhyped. And that's fine. She's strong. She's really, really good if you put her in the right situation to succeed. She's ultimately the reason that Jalter actually, who used to be sort of reigning champion for damage, Jalter actually ends up getting an NP buff because of her. So yeah, that should kind of tell you a lot about her. She is strong. You don't have to have her, but let me kind of go through why she is the way that she is. So for starters, I really like the deck. It's 2 arts, 2 quick. That is going to mean that generating NP after the fact is going to be pretty good on her. Again, good hit counts other than the arts card, but she does have a 0.81 NP gain rate. So another nice aspect there. That's something that's kind of missing with Jalter, because a lot of the times with Jalter, you have to rely on either force charge to get her there, or kind of like abusing an arts crit if you can manage to get both the stars and her skill activated, soaked onto her on that turn that she really needs to be able to pop off. If you do that, Jalter can get back to an NP relatively easy, but if you don't get that scenario, it's really hard. So Tyra's just going to kind of have that, and due to the fact that she's also a quick NP, she's still going to get some refund off of it. Just looking at her skills here, again, she gets damage increase against Genji traded enemies. And again, if you're ever curious as to who those people are, it's basically all of these. It's all the usual suspects that you guys can expect, again, from that sort of Heian era of Japan. So she is going to be able to hit them really, really hard. And you're not going to encounter them too much. A lot of her damage is going to be tied up in that, but you'll see here in a second. She gets critical damage for 3 turns of, again, 100%. That's a callback to Jalter right there. She gets a 30% charge skill here as well. And then she reduces the party's critical star absorption by 100% except herself for 3 turns. So she doesn't have a star soak. She has a no, you don't soak stars as well. That's actually pretty nice. That is basically one of Avengers' biggest problems. It's not enough at 100% to really sort of remedy everything, but it does even the playing field a lot more. And if she does generate a lot of stars for you, you're not going to care. So you only need a certain amount to tip it over to get the stars onto her. Looking at her second skill here, again, it's Kagekyo Never Dies EX. And this is probably, to me, one of her most broken aspects. So it grants herself gut status 1 time 3 turns, revives with 3000 HP, so it's not a 1 HP revival type deal. And it's stackable with other guts. This is good. It increases her own instant kill resistance for 3 turns. Also good. She's not going to be death nearly as much. And again, that's basically the only thing that scales here, unfortunately. But again, it's going to grant self on Guts activate buff for 3 turns. That when Guts is activated, grants self Thirst for Vengeance buff for 10 turns. Thirst for Vengeance enables extra damage from her NP. So this is a conditional modifier that means that if her Guts has been popped, she is going to hit even harder, and it's really, really nice in that regard. Again, the big reason you're going to level the skill isn't necessarily the death resistance. It's going to be the cooldown. This is a 1 time 3 turns stackable with other guts ability that has a 4 turn cooldown. That is a lot of uptime and a lot of coverage there. And remember, guys, a lot of the times in a solo environment, you get that guts pop, enemy's done. It's not working the rest of that turn. And she's not just reviving with 0 HP either. So there's a lot of good here, and I'm going to say something else about this in the future, so just hold on. Her third skill, if you thought she was done with survival, also grants evasion for 2 attacks 3 turns on a 6 turn cooldown. Oh shit. We basically have another coup situation going on here, another Herc situation going on here. That's why she's strong. She is Jalter with conditional damage, but very hard to kill. And I like it, especially given the fact that she's quick oriented and has a deck that enables sort of NP generation. She's going to get to her NP. She's going to be able to operate very well in a solo environment because of this. She's also going to increase her attack for 3 turns up to 30% with this, and inflict curse of 500 damage for 3 turns to all enemies. She gets Avenger EX as a passive, basically increasing her NP gen rate by 22% whenever she's hit. And again, she has a chance to reduce the party's debuffed resistance, but that is typical of that. She gets Oblivion Correction C for additional 6% crit damage and self-replenishment magic D of 3% every turn. Her third skill here is anti-rider attack damage aptitude, and you might be thinking, well, that's not that great, but chat, remember there are at least 2 Genji riders, one of which you are very likely to encounter in, oh wait, it's her! So interesting in that regard. You could basically be able to use this one very effectively, but only against Ushi yourself. So if you get her early and you're going through something like Babylonia and you're fighting Ushi there, that might work, but I don't remember if that Ushi is rider or not. Looking at her NP, it's a 10 hit single target quick NP. It removes 1 enemy's buffs, activates first. So there you go. There's another thing. Jalter gets buff block, so she prevents an enemy from buffing themselves after the fact. Kyra just removes them, so you never have to worry about buffs unless they're totally unremovable by virtue of it being a challenge or a boss fight or something like that. But again, that ability is just going to make her super strong in certain scenarios. She's then going to deal damage to them, and then she deals basically a formula of damage extra to them based off Thirst of Vengeance stacks. So again, it is going to be essentially, what, I think 25% for each Thirst of Vengeance stack, up to 4 stacks. So Really nice. Extra damage there. She's going to inflict Curse of 5 turns to them as well. So she's going to slowly start whittling them down and stuff, even if she can't get through. But that's not all in her case. You might be thinking, oh my God, what else could there be at this point? Well, let me introduce you to her Bond CE. When equipped to Tyra, increases on NP damage by 30% and grants self gut status 1 time, revives with 20% HP. So this is going to stack. So it's no Herc Bond CE, but it is a like sort of more offensive version. It is really nice. So again, Jalter didn't used to be this strong. Jalter got a nice buff to help out her NP damage, but Tyro is basically over the top of her, not with her base damage, mind you, but you start looking at all of this because 43k is no slouch, but then you start going like, oh God. So if they're Genji, she gets dumb. If she has 1 stack of Vengeance, she does 54k. If she's Genji and 1 stack of Vengeance, it's 162. Chat, these are neutral numbers. That's some of the highest modifiers in the game. That's that stupid, okay? And remember, that's just 1 stack of the Vengeful Grudge. You could get multiple. So, oh God, you can do a lot of damage. Is there a way to make people Genji? No, not yet. that would definitely help her out a lot more down the stretch, because like I said, most of the time you guys are probably going to be operating with, again, the NP1 sort of naked numbers, but damn if you can get her into that conditional range. Holy crap, she absolutely puts Jalter to shame, practically doubling her output there with vengeful stacks, and even without, still doing solid again, almost like 75% more damage than her. So I think she is definitely a unit that's worthy of looking at. You don't have to roll her by any means, but she is a solid option, especially if you guys need that single target Avenger. CE. Yes, the Mama Raiko CE. This one's really nice. So again, it's a spawn rate craft essence, so enjoy, chat, but it is all attack. And ooh, would you look at that? NP damage by 15%, critical damage of buster cards by 20%, and starting battle charge of 50%. Yeah, this is Suzukathai's the Buster version. This is a variant of Holy Knight's Supper that is specific to a singular card type. It is a very nice craft essence. You want to make sure you get all 5 copies of it. It is welfare. Enjoy. Holy Grail Front E2 Brute. You guys probably will get this. Again, this is going to be our next Grail Front. It's going to be the first one we've had in a long time. This is going to be the return of Roma. Honestly, if a lot of people on NA didn't roll Roma because they were already looking ahead at Melisson, I think this banner will be even less for him. Weirdly enough, this banner might get people to roll for other reasons. That has become quite a bit of a monster now for 3-turning with the Buster system. It is what it is, but she is sort of our top dog at the moment for AoE Sabers. You do also have Umu, who's hard to get your hands on, especially if, again, people are trying to wait for her in the 4-star ticket next year to get her. So that could be a thing if you wanted to sort of alleviate that need. Also, Estrella is absolutely bonkers and can pop off. I'm going to warn you guys right now, they're probably just going to go, okay, here's one banner, and then, okay, here's another banner. I don't know if this will be the exact sort of way that they'll do it, but I do anticipate that they're probably going to end up sort of like just pairing one of the 4 stars with one of the 5 stars and just going. I'd say, to me, this is probably one of the easier skippable banners as we start looking towards what's upcoming in the new year. But if you really like them, go for it. It's not bait if you want the unit, right? The Karen is an AoE quick-based ruler. And again, the knock against rulers is primarily not that they're bad or anything like that, but just why do I need a ruler? The way to think about it is it's no different than why do you need an AoE Avenger, right? So if you're going to sit there and criticize the rulers for why do I need it, then you should probably also be criticizing maybe your Space Ishtar and stuff. But even getting outside that and just thinking of it from a generalistic farming standpoint, Karen's really good. She's basically someone that can actually 3-turn from 0. Yes, that's not going to be ideal because she's quick, so you're probably going to need some sort of 3-3 X type node, where again your first 2 waves are made up of 3 enemies, and then we don't care what the final wave is made up of. But still, even that in mind, she can actually, I believe, handle at least one node where it's, you know, 1 or 2 enemies. So that is the benefit of having a 50% charge unit here. And again, she is pretty interesting in this regard. You guys will notice the same sort of deck as we saw with Tyra. It almost looks like they copied it. I'm not going to accuse them of that, even though I've noticed patterns like that before. But still, I definitely like the 2 arts, 2 quick setup. So her skills are a little wonky. Let's go through them. She grants herself invincibility, 3 attacks, 3 turns. That's obviously good. There's not a whole lot of rulers out there that have hard survival in their kit. So again, that means that not only is she can be resistant to damage, but she's actually just going to flat out negate it in the case of an NP or something like that. She gives herself a regeneration buff for 3 turns, which absorbs the party's NP gauge by 10% every turn except for herself. And then the amount of NP drained on allies is equal to the amount of NP charged by the skill of the users. It's basically going to be the 10%. I don't understand what it's trying to say there, actually. Weird. Grants party invincibility, 1 attack, 3 turns, except self. And then, so again, this is party based, not just herself now. And then increases the party's NP generation rate by 3 turns, except self. That's what scales with the skill. So again, the amount of NP drained on allies equal to the amount of NP charged by the skill user. Yeah, okay. Sorry, it's just saying that for every 10% stolen, she gains 10%. So if you're draining 20% because you drain 10% from each person to the left and right of you, then she's gaining 20% from that. So that's all it's trying to say, is that the amount stolen is the amount equal that it transfers to her. And that's fine. It basically works like Summer Melt in that regard, if you want to think of it that way. Again, her second skill here is a taunt, which is fairly nice, especially for a ruler, because there's someone that can typically take punishment. It's also her 30% charge right here. But remember, she's got that 10% charge per turn going from her allies. So that's fairly good. And now with the pins already being out on an A, you guys can abuse that even easier. So that does turn her into a pseudo 50% charger, but it's broken up. It's not all at once. And that kind of helps her in that sort of Scotty system. It gives her times where she can either pop it all at once or try to spread it out in order to help her benefit from it. It's going to drain her enemies as well by 1 gauge and reduce their attack and defense for 3 turns of, again, 20% each in that regard. So fairly nice skill there. It is going to sort of require a lore to get that 30% though. She's going to get mana burst for quick arts and buster performance for 3 turns. So she does actually get a rainbow 3 turn, but compared to Muramasa, who had 50% each, she only gets 20% each. So that's kind of the point I was trying to make there, is that typically if you have 3 turns, you get less. Typically, if you have all of them, you get less. And that's why it's only 20% here. She's also going to charge her own gauge here as well for another 20%. So just from her skills, she's got 50. And then she still has the amount incoming to her per turn from that she can get again up to, say, an additional 40% charge. It's why she's really strong. I remember when she first came out, though, we didn't have a pins, and the knock was, well, if you're using her with Scotty, you're not necessarily going to have charge on those Scotties in order for her to be able to drain NP from them. Nowadays, that's not an issue. You guys should have a pins. If you have unlocked it, that's going to really help. Doubly so if you've actually maxed it out. So that's going to make them basically able to be drained and have that. But you might see some people sort of bickering and moaning, looking for a Scotty that has a maxed pin to use with their Karen, just depending on the circumstances. Or again, the easy solution, put a charge C on them. So really strong skill there. She gets item construction A, independent action A for the additional crit damage. She gets masochistic spiritualist disposition EX, which again increases her own attack by 20% while she has debuffs. Hilariously enough, she has a 500% chance to reduce her own debuff resistance by 20%, which is treated as a buff, not a debuff. But I forget, because I believe her taunt is treated as a debuff. Is it, chat? Or something? There's something where she almost always has a debuff on her. I'm trying to remember, but again, oh, Black Grail is treated as debuff. Thank you. Yeah, so Black Grail would obviously work. She increases her own damage by 225 flat damage added. That's all it is. So it just means like instead of dealing 10,000 damage, she's going to deal 10,225. She gets Iron-Willed Faith and this is a really strong one. She's immune to terror, immune to charm, and increases her own buster resistance by 10%. Fairly good there. That's going to make her really solid in challenge content. But again, like we already talked about, she could be good as a farmer for you. Her third skill here is anti-archer attack damage aptitude. Normally we wouldn't care, but again, due to the fact that she might be a neutral looper, this could be of benefit to you. She has a 5-hit AoE Noble Phantasm, deals damage to all enemies, and again, it has been upgraded now over time to basically have super effective against chaotic alignment. It reduces their quick resistance by 20% for 3 turns, inflicts buff block status 1 time for 3 turns to them. So again, that's all enemies. So it's a enemy-wide buff block of 1 time for 3 turns, which I think is really good again in a challenge environment. And then increases own NP damage for 1 turn by 10%. Again, this is something that can be magnified with Oberon, so another really good aspect to her. You guys are going to keep hearing me mention Oberon anytime you see this NP damage, especially from an overcharge, because I'm trying to break you guys out of the mindset that Oberon is only Buster. He is amazing for all card types. He's just even better for Buster. Looking at her on the AoE chart, here she is already at the top. And again, debuff on self basically means that she's base 37%. If it's chaotic down the line with her upgrades, it's even more. And if it's chaotic with the debuff on her, it's even more. So Karen can be really strong no matter the NP level you get. Obviously, she can get dumb if you have even higher NP levels. Looking at the rest of the summoning campaign, we already talked about her. Sanzang is someone that now with the pins can basically go 0 or rather 20 to 100 in 1 turn. So it's made Sanzang really strong over time. She's still got an upgrade coming for her. Orion, OG Orion here still needs some love. Jack has fallen behind some, but Jack is still really good as anti-female. Lartoria, I love Lartoria so much. To me, she's still solid, but as far as damage goes, she has sort of been left by the wayside in the wake of Erish getting a super effective NP damage buff and Melisande just being dumb. So I'm going to say at this point, I don't really recommend rolling her, and I hate to say that. You can definitely do solid work with her. I have as well, but I have an NP 5 120 version of her. I'm not going to say you need that to do solid work, but you do need at least a decently high NP level of her at this point if you want her to be able to handle some of those in-game nodes that JP is handling nowadays. She can 3-turn very easily in the Buster system. It's actually kind of annoying how easy it is because she's actually wasting charge, but it is what it is. John still needs a lot of work, but she can be a good party protection for you. They just kind of need to start examining her skills. They've already addressed one of them. They need to go back and address the other 2. Europa, I've heard a lot of people say that they find Europa lackluster. Europa can still 3-turn in the Koyanskaya system and still hits very hard. She's actually super defensive as well, so I really like Europa depending on the situation. Dioscuri is still absolutely just a boss murderer. They have Invuln Pierce on NP. They have the ability to really generate Noble Phantasm to get back to an NP very easily thanks to their card gimmicks. I really like them. Anastasia, where's your NP Interlude or any buff for that matter? Same thing, Bradamante, you could also use some attention, though she's not nearly as bad as people think nowadays thanks to Summer Scotty. Osaka Behime just needs some attention. Again, I hate to say it because she's already been buffed so many times, but basically outside of like Rider bosses, to me, I don't really see much of a use for her. Mabe, we already talked about. Nightingale needs some love. She's basically been sort of killed off by the likes of 1, all the Buster supports, and 2, Castoria existing, sort of negating her primary niche, which was reducing enemy NP damage. And nowadays a lot of bosses too have like debuff immunities and stuff, which really just sort of has made Nightingale not be strong down the line. Tamamo is still perfectly fine. I hear a lot of people bitch and moan about her, but I have used her in solos. I have used her actually for Again, just challenge content over time. She's still really good. I don't know why people bitch about her. Seton Eye is definitely someone that I think could use some tweaking, but she's still really good as well. She's another sort of like looked down upon unit that I don't think really warrants it. Janako is defensive, but to me, she's sort of a jack of the trades that she has. She is not a master of any of the trades that she has, and she's certainly not a jack of all trades either. She's very defensive. She's gotten some adjustment, and I really like it, but I still think she needs a little bit more tweaking. So she's still good for you if you don't have a moon cancer. That is sort of her claim to fame. She is a permanent moon cancer that can be spooked or rolled. Arturia still holds up extremely well over time, even in the Koyan Skya system. The fact that all of her skills are basically 5-turn cooldowns means that not only can she pop them twice in that system, but she can actually pop them back-to-back turns, which means a problematic wave 2, a problematic wave 3 is not a problem for her. So I really like Arturia in that regard. Mordred would be largely the same here, except Mordred just doesn't have nearly as much damage. You can certainly make your Mordred hit hard, but Mordred could probably at this point use a little bit of love on JP, as she is sort of falling backwards quite a bit. Not necessarily due to her doing anything bad, but more just due to the insane buffs that some of the other units have gotten at this point. Feature's still really good. Again, we talked about this. She basically has anti-divine for the entire party, which can be solid in certain situations. And again, she is a decent looper for you guys as an arts unit. Drake has actually gotten some love. She's kind of the reason that a lot of people feel the way that they do about Europa at this point, because basically Drake is just harder hitting Europa with more charge, and I don't blame them for thinking that. Drake is still really good, but if you're an old school player, a lot of you already have her and have long ago bonded her. Ketz is in a weird spot. I still think Ketz is really strong, but she was with parity with Ozzy, and they basically each got a buff that kept them in parity, but then Ozzy got an NP interlude that just skyrocketed him beyond her. So I'm kind of hoping at this point, and I'm gonna say with the way LV7 has already turned out, that it is extremely likely that Ketz gets a buff. Extremely likely. Expect an NP interlude for Ketz soon. And then you've got obviously Scheherazade. Scheherazad's actually a 0% looper with the Castoria system. I'm not sure a lot of people understand that, but yeah, she could be a Black Grail looper for you. So a lot of people shit on Shez because they don't really like her character or something like that, but again, she's actually really good. We get the campaign rerun. Again, just talking about say, show now, go on. I'm gonna say right here, this is gonna be something that's gonna catch chat's eye. I was just showing off me looping with Okitan Saber earlier with the C. It's solid, you don't have to have it, but in a scenario where you're maybe starting from 0, but your unit's not quite good enough to loop with Black Grail, that CE can actually work wonders for you. So again, I believe it's 15% quick performance at MLB, and it is all attack scaling, so it's fairly solid. Talking about Say, though, Say is another unit that I think has just sort of been helped down the line. She was one of those units that kind of struggled to loop. Now with Summer Scotty, you've got NP gain getting given to her instead of necessarily like defense down. So I think that really helps her. I think she gets to carry it in between waves, and that really helps her pop off. And then Summer Scotty also giving her the ability to maybe crit down a wave has really helped her a ton. So having not only triple quick supports, but also better quick support, I think has really helped Say shine, and she can actually be your primary archer and farming archer for you at this point. And again, she's got a shit ton of niches that she can exploit, so I think she's actually pretty good in that regard. 23 million downloads campaign. Ah yes, Arthur. So I've heard a lot to do about Arthur. This is where his Buster gets the strengthening quest that makes it 3 turns. This does help him out a lot in the future. And what do I mean by that? Well, so for starters, when this happened, a lot of people looked at the NP gain here and said, you know, we know Buster's probably going to be getting something into the future. What if he gets, instead of NP gain, what if Buster gets the ability to like have an NP that generates Noble Phantasm? And then like my mind starts going a buzz of like, oh God, they've just turned this man into a monster, because he would be able to loop really easily in an NP gain based scenario. But in retrospect, yeah, obviously it's not going to happen, and they've kind of gone the way of weird nodes where NP gain isn't what you want. You want hard charge. I think Arthur's day in court is still yet to come. I think somewhere down the line, Arthur gets an NP interlude. And when that happens, I've already said how I would fix Arthur. I'd give him that 10% charge on the back end of his NP like a lot of the other Sabers have. Sorry, Saber faces. That would turn him into a 30% charger and able to work in the Koyanskaya system. He would hit really hard. Giving him an NP interlude actually means that, and again, I've talked about this before, but let's go look at the NP damage chart. I've seen a lot of people shit on Arthur. He definitely kind of deserves it to an extent. Not that like, oh, he's done something to deserve it, but more like, yes, his performance is not that great right now. Like, again, he is the least of the SSRs, lower than even Muramasa, who is a looper, right? An arts looper, and you expect Muramasa to be sort of lower on that totem pole. But so he's down here. Here's the thing with Arthur. Guys, when you get an NP interlude, if it's just standard, nothing else added, NP2 of a unit's damage becomes NP1 in an interlude scenario. And NP5 becomes NP2. So looking at Arthur, that means instead of him doing 22k, Arthur is now doing 30k. Well, shit. Where's that put him on the... Oh. Problem is he's only 20% charge. That's why I said if you give him that 10%, all of a sudden he works in the Koyanskaya system. He's your second highest damage in raw damage on the chart. Saber, he's good at that point. He's solid. He actually would pop off for a lot of people. So he's tied for second highest attack power amongst all Sabers too. I think only Ibuki has him beat, and I think he's tied with Sigurd, who's a single target. So Arthur's kind of like a sleeping giant a little bit. He's capable, and ironic because he's super large, niche, but again, he's someone that could absolutely pop off if the circumstances are right, if the upgrade that he gets gives it to him. So you don't have to roll him here. You can definitely wait until an upgrade like that happens, but I do think don't shit on Arthur yet. He's not there yet. He's gotten a lot of attention, but still not gotten the thing he needs. But when he gets it, he's starting to look scary because this 3-turn buster performance is going to be stackable in the Koyanskaya system too. So he's going to scale a little bit stronger. This is an interesting one. This is your Chaldea boys from this year, so obviously it's going to have a bunch of units I'm not going to talk about. It's also centered around Amakusa. Amakusa has come a long way. Honestly, I'd say he's faring a lot better than Janu nowadays. Amakusa actually gets a very nice damage buff here that really helps him hit hard. I actually kind of have a problem with it because Amakusa is now, I think, like, I'd have to go back and check, but I think he's one of the hardest hitting rulers at this point. Obviously Karen out damages him, but let me see. Karen and Summer Shisho out damage him, but here's Amakusa. So Amakusa is out damaging Moriarty ruler. He's not out damaging either of your welfares, but at least one of those welfares cannot 3-turn, and he is out damaging Bunny. So my issue here is Amakusa should probably be the least highest ruler, and the reason why is because Amakusa buff strips, which will never not be useful. That is always going to be a useful tool in your arsenal to have. I think the reason that they ended up buffing him here is because they looked at him and they looked at Summer Abby, who is also AoE with buff strip, and I think they said, all right, he needs to be doing more to kind of hold his own against her. So I understand that they just need to come back and actually give units like Bunny a buff, maybe start looking into Ketz's kit, that sort of thing, and things will be a lot better. But right now, Amakusa actually hits very hard, and again, remember, this is all prior to like Summer Scotty existing, so basically he was the number 2 ruler at that given moment when he got that buff, and it was like, holy shit, why is he this strong? Amakusa's always had a clunky kit. His charge is very finicky for how it works, but he's still good in that regard. He is excellent for taking on challenge content because of his ability to just remove buffs with his NP. So, and again, it's before damage, which is always a nice thing. He's obviously, again, going to have Watanabe here on right up with him, who is another really good single target Saber. Again, there's going to be a whole bunch of other sort of males here available for your role, but just like with the Valentine's banner, again, expect them to be like sort of rolling 3-day raid ups. So again, it is up to you, but just talking about each of them, we already kind of mentioned Dioscurius, very solid boss killing type of single target saber. Xiang Yu, honestly, at this point needs some help, but the existence of Summer Scotty does allow him to loop. It's disgusting, but it does. So he's not as bad as people think he is nowadays. And he does have Invuln Pierce. So we're getting to that point where finally Xiang Yu might be getting more appreciation for what he is. Sadly, I think he's largely going to get left by the wayside for someone like Sen, who has come out more recently and has Charge in her kit. Charge is still going to be meta no matter how we look at it. So yes, he can be 3-turned with, but it's going to require a perfect node setup for him to do it. So there's that. He does have a lot of crit damage though. Napoleon can absolutely be 3-turned with. Again, he's a 30% charger in the Koyanskaya system, so he still holds up fairly well, and he is anti-divine, which is a nice niche to have. Sadly, there's not a whole lot of divine sabers though. Again, Odysseus, I've had a lot of people talk about him over the year here, especially with like DVR and him kind of being competing. Remember, he removes defensive buffs before damage, so he's really solid at just kind of cutting right through an enemy and getting to the heart of things. And he is a solid looper. I do like him. He's not gonna be insano refund like Da Vinci is, kind of with that forced after the fact refund on her NP, but he is still good for what he does, and he does hit harder than Da Vinci at NP level per NP level. So I do still like him. I think he's a really nice unit to have in your kit. Vlad, chat, you guys need to take any preconceived notions you have about Vlad being bad and just bundle them up and throw them out, because he is not. He is actually really solid. I am going to say though, don't roll Vlad here. There is a better opportunity to roll him if you so choose. We'll talk about that later, but yeah, Vlad is a single target looping arts berserker, and that is a terrifying thing. This makes him absolutely a boss shredder and killer, and he can do really solid. You can roll waiver here if you want him, but again, for most of you guys, you either have him or you could have gotten him off of your, sort of beginning of the game ticket. If you don't have that ticket yet, because it's not a thing yet on NA, just wait until Annie 6 and you will. So you don't have to wait too long on that one. Nemo is still really solid. I think the only issue with Nemo is primarily the conditional damage being waterside or void space. Basically every summer Nemo is insane. Every CCC event Nemo is insane. It's just outside of those two scenarios, very not common that like a scenario pops up for him to be extra good at. Without that, he's a little bit lackluster because a lot of his stuff is conditional upon being in that sort of niche. So he's still a good unit. He's still an excellent single target rider if you want it, but to me, he's not my single target of choice. So it's just up to you. The good news is he is permanent, so he can spook you at any given moment. Arjuna has honestly come a long way. He has gotten some love to his charge skill that does get him out of the 25% hell that Karna is stuck in. In fact, I wish they would do something about that with Karna, but we'll talk about that in a second. But ultimately, and I've said this before, Arjuna is not a bad unit. He's just stuck in a class full of monsters. So he kind of has that sort of odd issue of just sort of being odd man out a lot of the time. Still, if you have a high MP level Arjuna and you don't have anything else in your account, level him. He's good. He's actually going to hit hard for you. So he's not going to be the worst thing in the world for you to invest in. Karna is anti-divine. He's just stuck in that 25% hell. And the way I've equated this to be is 25% for all intents and purposes may as well be 20%, because you can't double that skill up in enough to make it an even increment to work in the Koyanskaya system. Therefore, he is stranded and unable to utilize Koyanskaya and Oberon as well. Sorry, the double Koyanskaya Oberon setup that everyone really hits hard with. So instead, he's relegated to more of a like Koyanskaya double Oberon type of deal or something else to make him work, which can still work, but it's not going to be nearly as powerful as the other equivalent. Still going to be good for him. You can still use him. He's not a bad unit. And anti-divine is, again, another really good niche to have, especially against archers, which a lot of them are. Ozzy, we've already talked about this. Ozzy is actually going to be getting buffs this year, not here, but later on down the line. Ozzy is going to become disgusting. Like, really disgusting. He's going to hit stupidly hard. It's actually kind of dumb how hard he hits in comparison to everybody else now. I think a lot of this was due to a sort of reaction of, one, seeing probably that buffs for Kets were coming, two, that buffs to Ushi had happened and were kind of putting pressure, like upward pressure on the 5-stars to actually do their damn jobs. So Ushi was hitting so hard that they needed to start kind of paying attention to this. A lot of single target riders were in this position, kind of like a lot of single target archers are in now. We haven't seen much still on that front, but Ozzy is at least the first one of that sort of pack to get some upgrades. I think you'll see Kets this year as well on JP, and who knows, but still, he's a really, really good unit. Highly recommend looking at him, and he does work very well in the Koyanskaya system. Tesla has come a long way. He is not nearly as bad as people used to think he was, and honestly, even back then, he wasn't bad. People just didn't understand him. I've often seen Tesla actually used very well, because again, he's a 50% charging unit, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If you have 50% charge, you can't be a bad unit. You just are just naturally going to have uses, and that still largely holds true. And someone in chat's probably going to give me an example of a unit that they think is bad. I'm going to tell them not to do that because they're wrong. Again, Tesla is, again, another really solid option. He does have two very wide niches that he can exploit. So I think he's come a long way, and he is solid and does work in that Koyanskaya setup. Enkidu is still really dumb, honestly. Enkidu still hits like a Mack truck, and I'd say I still, even nowadays, feel like Enkidu's buff was unwarranted. Not that Enkidu didn't need a buff, but more that the length the buff went to was still overly strong. Don't get me wrong, lore-wise, it makes sense, and Enkidu is strong, and how they've dealt with it for some of the other single-target Lancers has been to give them charge, something Enkidu lacks. But Enkidu is still a powerhouse when it comes to dealing damage, and is still really strong as a solo unit. And that has been one of the reasons why I didn't think Enkidu needed that buff, is just because you took a unit that was already extremely self-sustainable and made it dumber, made it more strong. So Enkidu is really good. If you don't have one, highly recommend looking into getting one, but you don't have to have it. It's just another one of those units, kind of like Herc and Ku, that's really good if you feel like you're going to fall apart, or you really just want to solo something for the ease of it. Again, having the ability to stun divine enemies is really solid. I've talked about this before because a lot of people try to say that like Enkidu stunning divine enemies is somehow better than Shisho, who stuns everyone. And I still don't understand that logic argument there, because I think it's really dumb. But still, again, we've already talked about this. There's a lot of divine archers, there's a lot of divine units in the game that Enkidu can just lock down because of that. So it's not a sort of takeaway from Enkidu so much as I don't understand people making that argument. Again, Enkidu's a really good unit. Achilles has been in my doghouse for a little bit. Not that he's bad, he's actually really good in challenge content, but Achilles is someone that to me has always been weird in a Scotty type of setup. This has to do with the way his charge skill works. He actually has 30% charge tied to his NP gain skill. And you might be thinking, well, that sounds good, Cad. It results in some really weird charge increments for him. So oftentimes, like without the skill, he'll refund like 20%. With the skill, he'll refund the 50% he needs. And it results in some really weird, like, oh, you were so close to looping type of scenarios. Guess what? Summer Scotty, all that's gone now. So Achilles is now in a much better solution, or much better situation to be able to handle that sort of stuff. I really like him. He is a solid unit, and he's always been strong, in my opinion, outside of that weird sort of charge issue, because his kit is solid. He's always had the capability of handling challenge content very well, and his card performance is good. Already talked about, again, Ku Berserker there. Talking about Old Man Lee. Old Man Lee, if he hasn't already, he gets his NP Interlude this year. Again, this is going to help him sort of leapfrog to the top of the single target assassin chart here. He's going to be really, really strong. Going to actually like sort of be a good kind of one trick. And I know people have told me before, well, why do you think he's one trick? He's not so much as, again, he just has one turn buff durations, and that sort of makes him a very much boom and bust type of servant. He's gonna hit really hard one turn if you line it all up, and then after that he's gonna kind of limp along for a couple more turns trying to get back to the scenario where he can line it all up again. But again, he's still fairly solid. You can't impede with him at least back to back, given the right scenario with the right cards. So I do think he's really good. He does have Death Proc. He does have Invuln Pierce in his kit. Again, then you get Summoning Campaign 3, and that is going to be Voyager and again Watanabe here. Voyager is another interesting unit. I'd say he's been a little weird over time. He's been a unit that almost is like a quick version of Da Vinci with far less refund, but that party-wide charge has been solid. He's just always been low on damage. That has been one of his big issues, and his refund has been somewhat weird at times. Again, Summer Scotty really helps this out. He's in a much better position with that sort of thing, and he has kind of received some attention over time. So I think Voyager is better. I think he's definitely a lot more worthy of paying attention to. And a lot of that now comes due to his sort of competition with Jack de Molay, which we'll talk about later. So there's a class-based summoning campaign here. This is going to be very, 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 very interesting. Let me tell you why. There are two possibilities in my eyes for how this is going to play out. Possibility number one, you get the banner. You don't have pity on it. Possibility number two, you don't get the banner. Both of these are likely to occur. I could not tell you which. Either way, it's not a good idea. So I'd say now more than ever, this banner, I know people have a tendency to call these sorts of banners bait banners. I have never really ascribed to that because I've always said that, you know, one man's bait is another man's, you know, wife or husbando, right? Again, it's one of those deals where if you have a far more developed account that doesn't have any glaring holes, yeah, this banner is bait to you. If you have a newer account, if you maybe have a particular class that you're not good at, these banners are awesome because it's just like, shit, man, I really need a rider. You roll the rider rate up, you're good, right? Like you'll get something, it will probably help you, and there you go. So it's not always bait for people, but allow me to say this, that if it doesn't have pity on it, and I don't really see how it would due to the way pity currently works, yeah, this is probably the baitiest it's ever been now. Now there's even less of a reason to roll here, I would say, if you're a developed account. If you're a newer account, still not bad, but I'm going to say again, this is definitely one of the easier skips, I'd say, this year. And I'm going to try to tell you guys and point out those to you when I can, because again, this year does have a lot of lucrative banners that people will want to roll. But again, you guys can see it does rotate between all of the classes. You even have an extra class day. And here is, again, going to be your sort of brackets. I'll just kind of focus on the extra class one because to me, it's kind of the most interesting. So remember, these banners have all story locked and permanent units, just not limited units. So you guys can still roll units like Gorgon and stuff here. That may be of interest to you if you're after a particular very hard to get unit, especially if they're of the 4-star variety. But other than that sort of scenario, I'm going to say most of you guys probably are not going to care. And this sort of thing is just going to come down to rolling if you're total degenerates or you just feel like throwing caution to the wind. I don't recommend it, but it is an option for you. So Akhihabar Explosion was interesting for a couple of reasons. One, it's a new tower event. Two, we get Galatea, who kind of was a big talking point for a lot of time there when she first came out. A lot of people saw her as the new and improved Vlad. A lot of people were shitting on Vlad and saying like, man, he's so bad, he's so old. Again, most of the people that shat on Vlad even back then didn't use Vlad, because even right now, just with Castoria out, Vlad's really good. Like, he's come a long way from where he used to be. And with Castoria, you actually have some of the best protection that you can get for someone like Vlad. So yeah, no, I'm actually a-okay with Vlad at this current moment. Yeah, he still needs some work, but again, he gets it. So that's the thing that I think a lot of people are reacting to, is Vlad needing some work. But honestly, even without that, his capability was still amazing, and really all that gets improved is his damage output for the most part. So again, this one's not an actual bad one. We often don't get it ignore defensive buffs, actual craft essence. So it's arts and buster split. and it is all attack scaling. That's not bad. I've definitely seen worse. So depending on what you're fighting, that could actually be a pretty nice craft essence. Now, again, you guys can see there is a rotation basically of SSRs on the banner. We've got Galatea herself, the new single target Arts Berserker. And then you've got Nero Bride. This is going to have been her first banner in 18 months, I believe. And then you've got Osaka Behime. So again, remember, now that we have Pity, don't expect this sort of actual like schedule pacing. Instead, what I'm going to tell you is they're probably going to break it up where maybe Galatea goes the entire length, but then maybe someone like Bride goes like 3 days, someone like Osaka Behime goes another 3 days, and maybe they just rinse and repeat or something like that. I don't know. All I'm going to say is, again, that's kind of been how they've structured banners during Pity. So expect Galatea to be available probably all the time, but I'm willing to bet that maybe the other SSRs will not. They'll just have a window that they are available on. So you're going to have to check the banner when that comes out if you want to roll one of them. Funnily enough, I'll actually be rolling here myself. This will be when I will complete finally in P5 of Bride. She's one of only 2 Saber faces I don't have it in P5 at the moment. So, and that's just because I didn't start out as a Mega Whale when I first started playing the game. Let's talk about Galatea though here real quick. And again, you guys can see Bride also gets her Sky trait buff here. That's going to be a nice one. This actually, to a large degree, in my opinion, helped Bride stand out amongst the like, oh god, just use Castoria for everything. Now you kind of had a niche where she was both able to be used in place of a Castoria if you just needed a little bit extra looping power, but also simultaneously able to complement a Castoria, able to give even more refund and a damage niche if that's what the situation called for. So I did like this buff. I remember treating it very favorably when it first came out. I thought it was a very smart buff to give her. Also because it can be used on herself and thus does sort of help her damage output. Since honestly, Bride was one of those sabers that for a long time, due to the nature of her kit being pseudo support, she had often gotten the short end of the stick on damage. And what's weird is for a long period of time, she had been neck and neck with a lot of the other single target sabers, but the only reason that she had was because she had an NP interlude and they didn't. She was for a long period of time the only single target saber with an NP interlude, and that is why she was able to keep pace with them in damage. So a lot of people forget that naturally her damage has been lower. This now means, yeah, it's still going to be lower compared to some of the other people that have gotten their NP interlude, but she has that conditional buff to kind of help her say like, hey, when it's Sky traded though, I'm gonna pop off and still do really good damage, maybe even outperform the rest of you. So I did like that buff. I thought it was a really versatile, really smart way to fix her. Galatea though, again, just kind of going over her here, right off the bat, you're gonna notice something interesting. I called her an Arts Berserker. That doesn't look like an Arts Berserker's kit, and that is actually my primary criticism of Galatea. This actually does end up getting addressed, but yeah, that's one of my biggest issues with her. Her kit, in all honesty, to me seems a little bit better than Vlad, but I think Vlad has some interesting other stuff that he does that she can't do, and I always kind of had a little bit of a gripe with this deck. Triple Buster is strong. You're going to be popping off doing a lot of damage, but it's not really conducive to looping. We'll kind of show you what happens here. So if you look at her, again, her first skill here, it's a Arts and Buster tandem steroid for 3 turns of 30% each. And again, she gets buff removal resistance 1 time 3 turns of up to 100%. You are probably going to want to lure this skill. It's also 20% charge right here at the get-go. That's actually one of my annoyances. I don't really like tying a steroid to a charge skill too much. Doubly so when it's one of these weak 20% ones, because it means that you're basically supposed to pop it turn 1, and that kind of fucks things up sometimes, because a lot of the times that might be replacing a Castoria NP gain. It might be replacing your or again, just changing the sort of structure for what you want to do. You might be having her with her maxed out append and then that skill, and that would be 40% at the beginning. So what are you going to do to get her to max with Castoria? You're going to do double attack buffs, but then not have any of the NP gain. So that would be really weird. And that's why I've said before that I'm not a huge fan of these sorts of things, just for it can be good, but it can also throw off sort of natural buff structure and make you not refund as well, or have to cost yourself some charge somewhere in the back end. Again, the other possibility would be to simply not pop it turn one, but that in and of itself also has problems. Looking at her second skill here, she gets gut status 1 time 3 turns. It is stackable with other guts. This was immediately power creep, basically because we noticed that I think right before this they had given it to Vlad finally, or it might be right after. I gotta remember when that occurs, but basically again, I just remember thinking like, holy shit, they just gave her this on the outset, and that was pretty crazy. Though to be fair, they had also done it with Tyra, so pretty much since Hurt got his buff at Annie 4, was it, or was, no, I think it was Annie 5. At Annie 5 when Hurt got his buff to have stackable guts, ever since then they've started just power creeping and everybody's starting to get stackable guts. So it's not a problem, but it is an issue for looking at some of the older units that don't have that luxury yet. But I think one of the craziest things right here is actually increase own defense 2 times 3 turns by 100%. Now, I've had people tell me before that this means that Galtea will take no damage. That's half true. Basically, Galtea will take no damage unless the enemy has either something to counter that defense or buffs of their own that would exceed it. Regardless, a 100% defense here is going to mitigate a shit ton of damage. That is really, really nice. The problem is going to be, again, that it's only 2 times. That's 2 attacks, basically, that she's not going to take any damage. Still, as a berserker, damn, I'd take that in a heartbeat, because that could be really good. That might save me from an NP. That might save me from, again, just getting crit to death. So I think that's really, really nice. Probably the only weirdness is that it's tied in with the guts, which might, again, with the low sort of coverage time of the guts, maybe cause some issues with actually not getting the guts to pop in time. So you're going to have a couple of weird issues. You might want to wait until she's already been hit once or twice before popping something like this, just so that she's a little bit closer to having the guts get popped and being able to utilize that part of the skill. Again, it is a 3000 HP guts, which is a standard sort of revive, but hey, not good, not bad, just right in the middle. I like it. Her third skill is where she finally got some attention. And again, this is going to be her regeneration buff for 3 turns. It recovers the party's HP by 2000. So again, this is another one that's kind of weird in tandem with her second skill, where you're probably going to want this after the guts pops, not before, because otherwise you're going to end up sort of making it so that you might not actually have the guts get popped. 3 turns expire, your guts falls off, and then your character dies. You don't want to end up in that situation, but still, you can utilize this one pretty effectively if you're smart about it as well. And then again, it's a party-wide debuff cleanse, which is really good in the grand scheme of things, especially because I know a lot of people will sit there and say, well, Castoria has it on her NP. I remember saying this back then as well, but I immediately caveated it with, but there are definitely times, and you guys are going to see this in challenge content, where, again, sometimes it's really nice just having it on a skill cooldown so that you don't have to use Castoria's NP just to cleanse everybody. So I think that is a huge feather in her cap over Vlad at that point. But again, Vlad has some other stuff that he does in conjunction against her. Again, though, it's on a 7-turn cooldown and the healing is not that strong, but still, it's a 3-turn buff. So you're getting at rank 10, 2000 every single turn. So that's, again, 6000 worth of healing, not assuming any sort of external effect like a command code or a craft essence that can boost healing received. But then this also gets buffed, and what it does is now it grants an on attack activate buff for 3 turns that charges her own NP gauge when normal attacking with buster cards. This was exactly my criticism of her and her deck, and it appears the devs realized it. They went, oh shit, yeah, no, people are actually saying that she's kind of bad for looping because of that, and thus the advantage still goes to Vlad. I don't think they really cared at first, but then the second they buffed Vlad right after this, that's where they went like, ah shit, yeah, now everyone's just gonna use Vlad and he's permanent like her. Fuck, shit, maybe we should do something about that. And I think that's what they did. So again, it's up to 10% charge right here just off the buster cards. Again, I'm going to highlight the fact that, remember, Dioscuri has this on their quick cards, and Muramasa has it on all cards, which is dumb. Also, again, this should stack with Koyan Skaya's effect. So again, another really intriguing setup there if you wanted to really go for it. I've often pointed this out too, that I find it really hilarious that most of the people that get Madness Enhancement EX are not typically your Buster centric berserkers. So it is kind of funny that they sort of play games with the passive sometimes. But again, she's got that triple Buster deck, so hey, she can actually utilize the 12% Buster performance very well for herself. And then she gets Magic Resistance B, but nothing else. Her third skill, again, welcome to Berserkers. This is kind of shit. Don't worry about it. You guys know my stance on this, and if you haven't heard it before, my issue is basically that the third skill on a lot of Berserkers is functionally, I'm not gonna say useless, just like really niche. It's so niche that you can't reasonably expect to have it be an issue. Basically, if you were to pick this skill on her, that means that when you encountered an assassin, this would only come into play if the assassin was going to crit her. Now, assassins are very crit happy, so maybe this one's a little bit better than some of the others. But in general, like I said, this is one class out of, again, a multitude that you could be facing. So I don't really think this is worth your coins. I think this is far less worth than mana loading, or again, even the extra attack. So I've typically been of the opinion that the third skill on Berserkers is really just not worth it. Wait and see. Wait till they fix coins if you're unsure. Wait until maybe there's an announcement with, you know, future expansions to an append system, that sort of thing. That might give you guys a better idea then of where or how to spend your coins. Her NP is again 9-hit single target arts. That is actually really good. And again, if you go back and look at her NP gain rate here at 0.6, that's kind of why. Her NP gain rate wasn't the best, and while her hit counts were good on all of her cards, she had a triple Buster deck. So a lot of us were going like, what the fuck? That's not that good for looping. And then you look at the actual MP and you go, okay, 9-hit arts single target's really damn good. That's actually really solid. Again, there's plenty of other people out there that have similar type of effects, but they also tend to have lower NP gain rates because of that. But again, as you guys can see, she's going to deal damage to one enemy. She's also going to reduce their gauge by 1. It's a guaranteed effect. So this is both a count for her and against her, depending on how you want to look at it. Just like we pointed out earlier that sometimes it's better to have something on a skill than an NP, basically with her cleanse versus Castoria. Sometimes it's better to have something on a skill than an NP when it comes to drain, with Vlad having it on a skill and her having it on an NP. You can probably get off more by looping the NP, but sometimes just having it on demand on the turn that you need, regardless of having to use your NP, can be better. So it just depends as to the situation. It could be better one way, or it could be better the other way. And then her overcharge effect is going to increase NP damage for 3 turns, activating first by 20%. This is solid. This is really good. This is actually, again, another huge feather in her cap, because this is going to basically scale with Oberon already. And you might be thinking, well, okay, Cad, but it can't be that good. Well, most of the other people we've gone over so far in this list that have this sort of thing only have a 10% scalability. She has 20, which is already solid. I think that's up there with the likes of Space Ishtar and stuff like that. It's 3-turn duration, so it's going to keep getting stronger over time. It's going to be carried with her to the final turn of a loop. And remember, Oberon, while he is primarily like Buster, works in all card types, so you could use him here. And while the Buster up component of his third skill won't work on this NP, it will work on this. So following up the NP or preceding the NP with one of these could make her pop off really freaking hard. So again, like I said, I think that is a really nice kit for her. Up to you to decide if you want to roll her. She is permanent after the banner expires, so you don't necessarily have to. You could pick her up with the SSR ticket if you wanted to later that year. So again, there's any number of ways that you could try to get her. The Spring and Full Bloom Summoning campaign is an interesting one, and the reason I say that is because right now NA is getting Hokusai on their current banner, which seems a little odd because it seems like we could just get this again. I'm not going to say you're not going to get this. I'm not going to say you are going to get this. I have no idea if this was tied to anything. I honestly don't think it was. So I think it was just hey, we need a banner, we need to stall, because basically post Akhihabara we go into stall mode on JP. And I think that's what they're trying to do here. So you guys can't expect probably something like this, but if it does happen, and actually due to the fact that it's tied to her strengthenings, you will get it then. So I think that's going to be really, really nice. I had forgotten that these were here, but again, so based off that, then I'd expect it. But just remember, it's not going to be in this sort of order due to NA having pity. You're just going to get those sort of rolling rate ups, maybe. Probably 2 banners side by side is actually just what they'll do with this, since it's just 2 units. Maybe again, that's what they'll do for Akhihabar. They'll just run 3 side by side. Who knows? It's just up to them to determine whether or not they want to. But a lot of people ask me over time how I feel about Hokusai, how I feel about her versus Abby. That debate is an age-old debate. That's also comparing an apple to an orange. Which do you like better, chat? I don't know. It's a taste thing. Like, it's not in any way, shape, or form really that comparable. They're both foreigners. That's pretty much where the similarity ends. Again, Hokusai is a good unit. I think a lot of people, when she first came out, everyone was like, oh my god, she can't loop fluidly. Chat, you've got Castoria nowadays. Trust me, you can loop her, and if you can't, you've got Oberon coming, so you're gonna be able to loop her. That's not gonna be an issue. I think the biggest issue is that she's not necessarily gonna hit that hard unless you're facing man trade enemies, but those are really common, and that can actually still be really good, especially with the way her 3rd skill works. Doubly so after the upgrade. So, like I said, I think she's still really solid. Tamamo here is another interesting sort of topic for discussion. She is one of those meta supports. She's one of our oldest. She is, again, a unit from basically the 3rd month of FGO. Honestly, a lot has been said about Tamamo. A lot of people have declared Tamamo dead. Those people are idiots. That's the only thing I can say. I don't say that lightly. I'm not meaning to necessarily insult people directly to their face, but having a hot take of, hey, this really good unit that's really good for support and healing can't be used is dumb. She still does to this day basically the one thing that Castoria doesn't: heal. That's why you take Tamamo. You get healing. On top of that, she's got skill reduction for cooldown timings, and I think that's really good. Like, that is where a lot of Koyanskaya's kit comes from, is derivative of Tamamo herself, and I think that's a honestly really good reason to use her. Sometimes you want a comp like where you have Tamamo and Castoria, so you've got protection, but you've got cooldowns getting back, so that you get a lot of those powerful charge skills from Castoria, or you get your steroids for your damage dealer coming back over and over and over again, and you're able to pop off. Maybe it's not a fight that you can handle just in 3 turns, and thus it allows you to sort of go the distance a little bit better. Again, I think a lot of people are going to point out, well, okay, but now there's Proto Merlin, and there is. Proto Merlin is nice in that regard, but still, I think Tamamo does have some reasons to be taken over Proto Merlin, so it's just up to you. I think the big problem here is you can take her with the SSR ticket later this year. That's going to be a little bit of a problem, I would say. I think a lot of people are going to run into that sort of conundrum of, do I roll Tamamo to free up the ticket, or do I take Tamamo, but then my ticket is spoken for? So again, up to you to determine if you want to do that. If you don't have Tamamo, I highly recommend considering her. A lot of people are going to look to waiver as well if they're new. That's fine, but I am going to be honest and say that with Oberon coming in the future, you can still use waiver, but he is basically getting to the point that, at least for supportive capability, he's outclassed. What I really like waiver for still is in terms of stall and deprivation of the enemy's NP. Sadly, that has not been as nearly pivotal a strategy anymore, thanks to Castoria just sort of negating damage outright. So up to you, but I still really think Tamamo is worthy of your consideration. You get the servant strengthenings, and the reason I bring that up is because, oh, would you look at that? Would you look at that? There's Vlad's buff, exactly like I talked about. So Vlad was getting shat on for an entire week, and then basically, well, actually it was more like 2 or 3 weeks, and then after that, then boom, he gets an upgrade, then everyone goes, oh, they killed Galtea. So that is the typical knee-jerk reaction that people have towards one unit or the other, and it's pretty hilarious to watch how just one buff suddenly changes everyone's opinion, despite the fact that the buff may or may not just increase damage, not actually change how the unit works. So it is kind of funny to me that a lot of people just go apeshit. Again, there is a summoning campaign tied to this. I would not expect it to work this way. This is one where, because there's enough SSRs here, I would expect that they probably are going to do some sort of rolling rate up where it's like, hey, you got Vlad for 3 days, then you got, you know, like starting a day later, then you've got Ketz for 3 days, then starting a day later, you've got Moriarty for 3 days. And, you know, it's just going to keep going on and on and on and on and on like that. Or again, just at least for maybe like however long they need it to. Maybe they'll just run 2 of them in tandem. Who knows? But it is what it is. I think probably one of the biggest takeaways that a lot of people noticed here is Lalter is here, and she does have a singular day that she is on solo rate up as a 4-star. If you want Lalter and you don't want to have to use your ticket, this is your only chance. She has not been a part of anything else. This is basically the time to go for it. So I highly recommend paying attention to that new schedule and seeing how they do it. What's probably likely to occur is, because you have Rama, because you have Mr. Fister, and because you have Lalter here, is they're probably going to take each one of these SSRs and pair them together with an SR. So that may or may not impact your choice. Rather than being like, ooh, I want to wait for the day that Lalter's on rate up with Vlad. No, you might just have to roll when she's on rate up with Moriarty, because that might be the only one she's ever on rate up with. That is sort of the issue with Pity, especially when it comes to dealing with 4-stars. We gain basically the security of knowing we'll get the SSR. We lose the ability to determine which banner we wish to roll on for the SRs we want. So it's a trade-off. I hate it. I wish they would fix that, but it is the way it works, at least as of right now. So again, I'd say this pairing is probably pretty likely. You can expect she'll probably be with Jimmy, just like she was on the banner. But again, that's going to be one of the banners you're going to really want to roll. Otherwise, oof. But still, that's going to be an intriguing banner. Again, this is one of Katz's only banners probably until, oh, I don't know, Lost Spelt 7, where she'll probably get one again. She did get one earlier this year on JP, though, so I know you have another opportunity still. But honestly, it's up to you to determine if you want to go after Katz now or wait until she probably does get a buff sometime in Lost Belt 7 or later. So that's up to you. Again here, let's see. So we had the Waltz Pre-Campaign. I do believe this has a banner on it, and it does. Yes. So this was basically all of your costume servants got a banner here. A lot of debate was raging as to, you know, who is going to get the costumes and that sort of stuff. Again, expect that you're probably just going to have basically Shootin' have her banner and John have her banner, and probably just either Helena on both or Helena on one. I don't know, but either way, they're probably just going to change it up a little bit, but I would still expect this. So again, up to you to determine if you want to roll here. I still think Shootin's actually pretty solid. Her damage output is very good. And honestly, she, thanks to her upgrades, has managed to stand the test of time against a lot of the welfares. I'd say it's really pretty much only been since the Valks have come out now that she in any way, shape, or form feels threatened. And she still is good at what she does, at being just sort of a sort of STD for the enemies and just poisoning the ever-loving crap out of them and debuffing them. So I think she is good for that regard, but she is hard to 3-turn with. That is the basic issue a lot of people have, because she's only got a 1-hit NP. She does get a 30% charge kill, and that does really help her out, but sadly, again, it's not necessarily going to be the end-all be-all for you guys. But if you like her, go for her. I think she is still a very solid unit. It's also where John's second skill finally gets addressed. That was a excellent buff. Now they just need to pay attention to the other 2 skills in her kit, because she still needs some attention, but I will take this as a step in the right direction for her, as now, again, it affects everything, not just servants. So it is a much nicer deal. And again, it does also reduce their defense by, I think it's a whopping 50% for 1 turn. And then like, I think it's 20% for 3 turns and 30% extra for 1 turn, if I remember correct, or I might have that reversed. But and then Blavatsky here just gets even dumber, as this is basically when she becomes a 50% charger herself. The only sad part about Blavatsky is she is one of the best units you guys can start the game with right now on your 4-star roll beginning the game, if you're looking to start or if you're a new account or something like that. But The problem is she's going to leave that tutorial summon and basically get removed from it. I think this is why, is they realized she was the clear favorite to choose. Not only because she's a good AoE caster, but also because she's a pseudo support that has 50% charge for herself. Easily, hands down, to me, one of the best things you could start with. And a lot of people will tell you Herc for soloing purposes, but Herc is still good. It just takes him a long time to actually be good for you. And so Helena is just someone that's immediately useful in helping, like, whatever unit you're using to carry you through the early beginning of the game. She can help them, and that's why she is just such a really good unit to have early on in your Chaldea. We'll get to Grail Live here, and Grail Live is another interesting one. Again, you guys are going to get your first foreigner welfare here. It's Mixa, aka Mysterious Idol X Altar. Honestly, she's another interesting one. She's not really going to be like a fluid looper, but she can be made, I believe, to 3-turn in the perfect conditions. It's just, honestly, you're going to probably use her just because she hits hard and is AoE, not necessarily to loop. I had already mentioned that basically she's a nice hard-hitting AoE foreigner. She is quick based. She's only got the 2 quick cards, but again, good hit counts here. She does have good hit counts really on all of her cards, though I do wish maybe she had a second art instead of Buster. It's fine. You guys will kind of see why here. So she does get the tandem steroid here for 3 times 3 turns of quick and Buster of 30%, and an evasion 1 attack 3 turns. My only gripe about this is, okay, I like this. I like this. This is stupid. I do not understand this. There's no reason for it. This sort of thing is just a natural limiter that they keep putting on units to hold them back. It feels like it's fear of summer BB card locking, but I don't really understand why anyone would care about that. I don't think it's a big deal. I think it's kind of dumb that they put this stuff on servants. It's only going to frustrate you over time when you run out and you're like, why? I still had another turn, you know? Infinite Upstream Lyric C again is going to be basically her unique niche, and that's damage against mechanical enemies. That is a new trait that comes out with her. Again, you guys can see there are a decent chunk of mechanical servants. There's also some mechanical enemies that will fall under that. So again, this can be used for decent effect. Obviously, you guys are going to try to find some time to use her, but yeah, I think with her being a welfare and her being NP5, you're not too worried about that. Again, 100% crit damage here is nothing to sneeze at either, and it's all on a 4-turn cooldown if you lure it, so it can be used very effectively for her. Her third skill here is King Singing C. It's the party attack for 3 turns of 20%, so again, another nice steroid. And then a heal for the party of 2,000. Again, unexpected for her to have this, but I'll take it. It's not bad. I definitely will allow healing into a quick comp where Scotty has none, so that can definitely be a good thing for you. She does have a little bit of madness enhancement, pulling that from her berserker form. She does have existence outside the domain, and she has Alta Reactor here, again for an additional debuff resistance. It's just sort of a unique magic resistance passive. The third skill here is anti-berserker attack damage aptitude. Again, that is one you will want to pay attention to. Sadly, you will not have coins for her. That's going to be a bit of an issue because we don't know when we're getting a Grail Live rerun. This is one of the collab events that I actually hope they do rerun. It's a fun one. I really liked it. I hope they give it to us. That way we get the coins for her. Because again, that is a really, really nice passive, and doubly so if we can get the mana loading online as well. Her NP here is 4-hit AoE, and again, just kind of pointing out, yes, she did have a 0.9 NP gain rate. That means her card performance is going to be pretty good, but this is sort of why I say she's not going to be that good of a looper in spite of that. She doesn't really have charge in her kit. She doesn't really have anything that she can do sort of to facilitate this. So she deals damage to all enemies. She deals extra damage to enemies with an evil alignment. It's actually hilarious because this is the opposite of how her berserker is. Her berserker is anti-good. Her foreigner is anti-evil, which ironically enough means that her 2 forms are anti each other. Hilariously enough, the foreigner would probably trump the berserker in that regard. So it is weird, but still, I find that to be kind of funny. She increases her own quick performance for 1 turn of 20%. This is great. I wish it were 3 turns, but we can't make the welfare too OP, so I understand. So again, I think she could be strong for you, and just sort of to highlight her damage dealing ability here, let's go ahead and sort this and filter it to AoE. And you guys can see here, here's Mixa at an NP1, but we're not dealing with NP1, we're dealing with NP3, or sorry, NP5. Again, where she's gonna be dealing 33k raw damage. That is more than anybody else outside of niche. So yeah, that is a good spot for her to land. And then she still has mechanical or evil, again, up here at like 49k. And then mechanical and evil at 74k. So yeah, Mixa can be really powerful in the right situation. So she's not going to be your looper for you probably, but she is going to be a unit that, you know, again, can be useful to you. So don't look that gift horse in the mouth, especially if you need a foreigner. I think it could be really, really strong in the right setup. And then we get Miss Crane. Miss Crane's another often talked about one, mostly because I get a lot of people asking me like, Cad, what do you think about her? Do you think we need to roll her? Do you think she's a meta support? The answer to that is no. I don't think she is a meta support. I don't think you have to have her. I think time has kind of shown that she really is more of a challenge unit. I think she's really fun. I'm going to be rolling her on NA, mostly just because I really like her design. But I think even in spite of that, I think I'm going to have fun using her in like challenge content. And basically being able to switch the party around is sort of her claim to fame. So essentially the way to think about Miss Crane is Miss Crane is a plug suit in servant form, and unlike Qingong, unlike Arash, unlike anyone with a scapegoat skill, she doesn't kill anyone to make the party swap happen. So I do really like her. That means that you're always still going to have that backline unit. You're always still going to have her. You're always still going to have the unit that you plugged out. So I think she can be definitely interesting in that regard. Again, you guys can see she's got the triple arts layout. I do really like that. She herself is not a costume owning servant. I actually expect that they'll eventually address that, and they eventually will give that to her, but not right now, and I can kind of understand why at least. So let's take a look here. Her first skill here grants the party invincibility except for herself 1 turn. The second part of it is going to be party's critical star generation rate except self for 3 turns of up to 100%. Again, that's Cass Gill's modifier. That's a good solid amount. You might not pop off as much as say a Cass Gill using his 15 hit in P would, but still that can be really good, especially if you've got like a quick card mixed in there somewhere. She's going to gain critical stars as well in a star bomb feature based off the number of costume owning allies except herself. This is why I said I think they might address this at some point so that they just include herself so that this no longer becomes too big of an issue, and instead it becomes more of a like, oh, sweet, now I actually have, you know, herself just able to do this, but then if I have more units, I get even more stars. So I do expect they'll kind of address this, as I think they'll probably look back at some point and go like, oh yeah, we're not really seeing too much use out of Miss Crane. So I think that's why that one will probably eventually get addressed. But there's a reason that's important. So you guys can see you get 10 stars per costume owning ally at rank 10. Look at her second skill here. Charges her own NP gauge up to 100%. Deals 2,000 damage without killing herself. And again, has a 500% chance to draw attention to all enemies to the party except self by 300% for 3 turns. So she puts taunt on everybody else, not on herself. So it's kind of like an untargetable version of Odysseus's ability, where he's able to place taunt on 2 units, just not the unit that you're targeting, right? So another interesting thing there. And then we get to her third skill here. Increases one ally's critical star absorption for 3 turns, increases their critical damage for 3 turns again. So you get a nice crit damage buff of 50% here. Instant kill immunity for 3 turns on target. So okay, that can be good, especially considering we can play with the taunt some. And deals damage without killing self. Again, that's the demerit. That is kind of annoying. That means she deals up to 3,000 damage within her kit just to herself, but shouldn't be a big issue unless, you know, somehow Miss Crane's ending up on the field for prolonged periods of time, which probably means you fucked up. Again, still though, the fact that there is critical star absorption and crit damage for 3 turns on a target, really good. And then obviously instant death immunity can be solid as well. But why did I say the crit stars mattered? And we'll get to that. Territory creation here, she has her unique one, Atelier here for 7% arts performance, and then even more crit star generation for herself. She gets a unique item construction just called Clothes, and increases the party's buff success rate by 10% while herself is on the field, including sub members. So again, it's going to be nice for a unit that maybe has a ability that has a chance to fail, like Imperial Privilege, or again, you know, just something like Da Vinci or Tesla's abilities. But even then, Tesla's has kind of been addressed. So her third skill here is anti-ruler attack damage aptitude. You don't care. You're not going to be using her to that capacity. And then her Noble Phantasm is again going to be another really wonky one. It is a support type and it is EX, which means it is unique. So let's take a look at this. Can only be used when there are 20 critical stars or more. Remember how I said the crit stars mattered? This means you basically have to have 2 costume units with Miss Crane in order to use her NP, or some other source of crit stars. This allows her to use her NP, then that will increase the first ally in the party's attack except herself for 3 turns. It'll increase their NP damage by 30% for 3 turns, and it will move herself to the last slot in the party. So on the back line, but not even just in the back line, the last slot of the back line. Can only move there if there are 2 other party members left in, can only move if there are 2 other party members left in the field. In other words, there has to be somebody basically to replace her. Otherwise, she ain't moving. She ain't going anywhere. So otherwise, she'll just use it and just stay right where she is. Again, there are some notes here. After moving, the servant who comes out is the leftmost one in the sub slot. So again, basically the unit in the back line, the leftmost one will be the one that comes out of the party. She goes to the back. Everybody else just shuffles upward. Unlike order change, the position change will reset the deck, so it becomes the first turn of a new command card cycle, which is another interesting aspect here, because it does mean you can use her basically to reshuffle the deck for you. Again, this is also per her NP level, so this is what scales as you get more copies of her, going to increase the attack basically there on that portion of the skill for 3 turns. And then her overcharge effect is it's going to charge the first ally's NP gauge except for herself by 30%. So let me explain Miss Crane to you. Miss Crane can bestow buffs on a focused damage dealing unit for you. Miss Crane can then yeet herself to the back line and bring somebody else out, aka another support. Why is this important? Because this is allowing you to utilize even more supports, and it's allowing you access to Miss Crane's buffs, again, that you otherwise wouldn't have basically here, just to help the unit pop off a little bit harder. So again, I think this can be really solid for her in that regard. This is the problem with her, though, is going to be using her in any sort of farming capacity means you basically need to not kill. Thus, she gets relegated to challenge content where there's break bars. And the reason for this why is because you need the ability to use her NP. If you use her NP, though, remember, she subs the leftmost unit that isn't herself. So you might end up costing yourself a unit that you didn't want to swap if you don't do this at the right time. So a lot of the times how people will do this is they will use the damage dealer's NP, then use Miss Crane's NP, then Miss Crane rotates and brings the other unit in, and then you have that unit for the next turn. Okay, that's why she kind of needs to go after in the sequence in order to rotate that party to help. But like I said, that's one of the big issues with her, is it's more just that you need some way to be able to pull off her NP, and if you're just killing outright with the NP, you're not going to get her NP off afterwards. So like, another example, this is back in the day, we used to try and like 6 turn some of the CCC nodes, and one of the strategies was to use Tamamo on turn 4 after all of your buffs had fallen off to recharge the party. Again, it doesn't work though if you kill all the enemies, and thus the wave just goes to the next wave and you never get to see the next NP. So that's why one of the strategies was to low roll that wave, have Tamamo's NP go off, and then use the final card to kill the last enemy. it was jank, but it worked. And that would be a scenario that, like, again, would apply to Miss Crane if you wanted to use it in farming. We just don't really see anything like that, and it's really hard to make something like that happen. Keep in mind too, guys, guess what? Guess what stacks with Oberon? So I've seen people pull some really insane damage numbers in challenge content. Again, stuff like the super recos and everything with Miss Crane. The problem you're gonna have is, do you have her? Do you need her? Do you want her? You don't have to have her. She's really only gonna be something that's gonna be super relevant, I'd say, in challenge content, and honestly most of it's not designed around her, so you don't have to have her. But I think at least that she can be a fun unit for that sort of thing. So up to you to determine whether or not you want to roll her. Like I said, I'm rolling her because I really like the design. I think she's a very, very beautiful unit in that regard. Fate Grand Order Camelot pre-release movie campaign. I believe we've already pretty much had this. The only things we haven't had is we haven't had the buffs from this. So I'd expect you guys are going to get this, and you guys are going to get a summoning campaign. It just might not be called the same thing, because as you guys can see, you've already kind of had some of the, like, I don't know if we've gotten the C's actually. We might not have gotten this ones. We might have just gotten the first campaigns, but still. This is going to be a banner here for San Zhang, Ozzy, and Da Vinci. I expect you will get this. I expect it will include pity. It's just going to be striated. So again, you're like, hey, you roll here on Ozzy. Hey, you roll here on San Zhang. Hey, you roll here on Da Vinci. The thing that bears worth mentioning here is that these units are all quite good. Essentially, all of them are permanent. Sorry, no, Da Vinci's limited. Da Vinci's limited. Ozzy and San Zhang are permanent, and then obviously Bedivere is not. So these two are permanent, but both of these had been a long time on JP without a banner, especially without a solo banner. Like they get included on Valentine's days all the times, but those in the past had been hybrid banners. Now you actually have a solo banner here to roll them. Now, again, this year with Chaldea Boys and Valentines, the way it'll work with Pity, you might get your solo banner for those units if you so choose. It's up to you to determine if you want to roll there. But I will give you food for thought in that regard, and that is this guy. Hey, you like Bedivere? You think he's a good unit? Think he's strong? I think he is, especially for a 3-star, especially considering you only get one copy of him at Babylonia, or sorry, at the end of Camelot. You get coins. JP didn't get coins here, but you do. So that would be a reason to roll this one over, say, Valentines. Again, I can't tell you to necessarily do that if you find that you like the craft essences at Valentines, or again, just want to roll in that event to give you guys a leg up in it. That's up to you. But this is something to consider, is just like with Caster Coup on the Morgan banner, we're going to be pointing out, hey, this is a relatively rare 3-star, and NA already has the coin system early before JP did, so we'll be able to take advantage of this. Up to you if you want to roll here. I probably will be, but not necessarily just for the Betty coins, but because Cad likes San Zhang. Ozzy, again, we pointed out, has been a unit that's gotten 2 strengthenings this year, and this last one here just makes him go a little bit nutty, because basically he's going to be really good on Sunlight Battlefield, which then his NP gives later on. So you look at that and you're just like, wow, okay, Ozzy's actually popping off at this point. And honestly, like I said, I think he's going to be one of the good units for you to invest in into the future in that regard. I think he can definitely be worthy of that attention that you give him. He's been a unit that's historically been great, and he's still looking like he's going to be to that capacity, and especially sort of with his supportive abilities, with his party-wide charisma and his party-wide charge and buff success rate. Ozzy's still amazing to this day, even on JP. San Zhang, we've pointed this out earlier. Again, she's got now with the ability to have 20% charge from her pins, also the ability to charge 80% with her charge skill. She can go basically 0 to 100 turn 1 and just nuke something. That's really good. That means you can start her with a Black Grail if you want. There's a lot of good stuff you can do with that. Even with minimal support. So I really like San Zhang. Again, like I said, both these two units hadn't really had a good devoted solo banner in a long time on JP, but on NA they probably already will have. Da Vinci still is also really good. She still hits really hard, and I believe is our hardest hitting AoE caster, just in terms of raw damage. That's in large part due to an NP interlude, but also, again, she's sort of like DVR in that regard, that she just is really good for automating the charge. So you don't have to care too much necessarily about what amount of enemies you're facing, so much as, hey, do you have the damage output to pull it off? But I think she can be another really good one. And again, pins help that sort of situation a little bit more as well. So again, up to you, but that is a big consideration here. And then again, yeah, this is actually where Sanzang gets her damage buff basically to her taunt skill. She gets a party-wide charisma that just helps her out. And Betty's tactics also gets upgraded to have NP gain on it and just smooth out the amount of it. So again, this is a really, really nice banner for this stuff, and a sort of sleeper banner that I think a lot of people are probably going to ignore, but it's actually a really solid one. You get Holy Grail front, my super Camelot, and everyone went, oh my god, it's Merlin. Surely we're getting a Merlin banner, right? No. So basically you guys get the summoning campaign here, and it's Lartoria and Mordred, as well as the Knights of the Round. So you're not getting the Merlin banner, sadly. Everybody got debated by that. It was kind of funny to watch, but again, I'm not too surprised, because, you know, he had just run in the prior summer, and they have a tendency to punt some of these until later. And again, he does show up later on, so it's not the last time. But again, this is one of the first opportunities to roll Lartoria in a long time. This is actually where she does, I believe, get her upgrade. Yes. Okay, I had to go find it, but again, this is the upgrade to her mana burst. It actually gives her 2 different 50% power mods against chaotic and evil, so they can combine to be 100%, or again, they can be used one off each. I've had a lot of people criticize that over time and say like, oh, it's a stupid buff, there's not too many people that fall under it. I don't understand those people. There's still plenty of people that fall under that. I've used it to great effect already several times, even in lottos. So the fact that people criticize this buff is really dumb to me. The only thing I'll say is, yeah, I really do wish that she had an NP interlude. I think an NP interlude will help her more in the long run, but I'll take this for now, assuming she gets some kind of attention at some point later. She honestly does need it at this point. She's lagging behind not just Melisande like everybody else, but honestly a lot of the other AoE Lancers at this point, especially with Erish, someone that had always kind of been relegated a little bit more to party support, basically surpassing her and now getting super effective Earth modifier on her NP. I'm not asking for them to make her insanely broken, but I think they can just give her a standard NP interlude and it would just help a lot. Though my personal desire would be to see it not just be standard and actually give a rank of overcharge. If they do that, she becomes a Black Grail looper and Cad's a very happy boy. But I don't think they'll necessarily do that, so we'll just have to wait and see. Tristan gets some love to his first skill, and it's kind of funny because I remember calling this out basically not as it happened, but rather later when Balbon Sith came out. I pointed to this Tristan buff and said that's why they gave him the buff. It was preemptive because they were already trying to kind of one up with the sort of fairy Knights of the Round, the old Knights of the Round. And taking my my gameplay arguments out of this, I do think it's kind of weird that from a lore perspective, you're just trying to make the fairy Knights of the Round just flat out better than the original Knights of the Round. To me, they should just be different, but we'll not get into that. That's a little bit of spoiler territory, so we'll see. But again, nothing too much there just to write home about. Again, you've got a standard summoning campaign for these units. Almost all of them are story locked or limited, so that is an issue here. Actually, no, there's just story locked on these, no limiteds. But again, up to you. You definitely can take Lartoria in the SSR ticket if you wish, or you can roll her here and not have to. Again, it's up to you if you want to go after her. Same thing with Mordred. They're probably just going to divvy it up where it's like, hey, here's one banner and here's another, and that's just how they'll handle this one. But we'll just have to wait and see. Again, the fact that there are actual upgrades here tells me you will get this. Not only that, but also the fact that it is a Grail front, and it was a pretty interesting one when it came out at the time. Then we got Summer Camp here. Again, this is Summer 5. This chat is what I pointed out, that like it's the hey, wait and see on pity. This is gonna be a really interesting one. we don't really know how they're going to handle this sort of thing. We can look towards the rerun of Summer 6 on JP. We can look towards the banners that they did on Summer 7 for how they're going to do it, but the reality is they're probably just going to divide it up, say here's an SSR, here's an SR, and pair them together, and that's all you're going to get. It definitely helps you guys, especially rolling last year versus this year, if you didn't want to have to roll these banners going into this, because yeah, rolling someone like Fujino could be really oof right now with this kind of leading up to LB6. Talking about the banners here, obviously you've got Kiara Moon Cancer. She's a really good unit. She still holds up really well over time. I think you guys have now gotten some time to use her and seen that, yeah, she's actually really good in like challenge content and stuff and hitting hard when she needs to. Interestingly enough, I'm going to point this out just like I pointed it out last time, Tunguska. Tunguska sort of has a couple of key units that are really good in it. She is one of them, and it's because she's a demonic beast servant. So if you don't have a Melisson, if you don't have an Ibuki to kind of help you out in that event, she can be your bailout option. She can really help you. And actually with the final Tunguska raid, I think an NP1 Kiara Moon Cancer with a normal Black Grail, not MLB, with double Castoria and a Tamamo as a plug suit option will 3-turn the raid for you, which is ideal and does work solidly at NP1. So like I said, that's the reason I point that out. Mr. Bob was the one that discovered that himself, and I started using that during the Tunguska raids myself last year. So it was really, really nice to have a, quote, cheap to play option. It's not free to play, I definitely know that, but that's the reason I'm pointing that out, is that can help you get through the Tunguska raids if you don't want to have to roll that banner for the damage she, if you just have a normal Black Grail, that sort of stuff. Again, Ilias Veal has been another interesting one. I said this before that, like, I think a lot of veteran players probably just have Nyanta, aka Atalanta, and they just run her if they need a quick AoE archer, or maybe they've rolled Say and they have her. The thing that I like about Ilia overall for this sort of thing is she's got charge, and I've always told you guys, hey, the charge is going to hold up really well over time because of this sort of thing. So that has always been a good part about Ilia. Brynn has been really interesting, especially the fact that she has a party-wide Brynhilder's Beloved buff. You can use her to take out a wave, charge herself over time to take out that wave maybe, and again, help buff the rest of the party. So she might not be super strong in her own right, but I have found uses for her in farming, and I actually am using her right now, basically, in the demonic flaming Oni heart in 5.5 node, that one. Again, summoning campaigns for the males here. You've got Sigurd. Sigurd's been an interesting one over time. He has gotten some love, but he's obviously sort of without charge, so he's in a weird spot. I'd say he's not bad. People give him a lot of shit, but he's not one of the best options you can roll for a single target Saber anymore by this point. It's just you can make him work. He can be your single target Saber. He's got really high attack power. He's got 100% crit damage. So again, if people try to tell you he's bad, they're wrong. But yes, he could be sort of outshined by units that just have a much more fluid, capable kit for refunding back to an NP, or for popping off even harder just with an NP. It's sort of up to you. Lanling Wang, again, another interesting unit. If you guys don't get someone like Ozzy and you need buff success chance, I like Lanling, especially given the fact that he's a little bit more art centric compared to a lot of the other options who are either sort of unaspected or maybe even a little bit quick centric. I like Lanling for this sort of thing. So he can be nice. He's still permanent. You don't have to necessarily roll for him. And then everybody's favorite, Emiya. I've talked about Emiya over time. He's pretty much the most bonused unit in the entire history of FGO. He's been in more banners and more events, I think, than just about anybody else. But people often, I'd say, overhype Emiya's damage output because of the fact that he's been on so many banners. So many people have NP5 of him. Not too many people have had to run an NP1 Emiya and then realized, oh my god, this does not kill. Yeah, that's the problem I've run into before with my JP account back in the day. I understand people sort of forget that his MP5 damage can be good. He does have a nice kit. He can be a serviceable archer for you, but yeah, just if you only have one copy of him, be careful. He's not necessarily going to be the most damage dealing for you. Okay, and so that is the male banner, and then you get summoning banner number 2, which is Abby Summer Fujino. Tomoe Saber and Murasaki Saber. This is going to be oof with pity. There's a lot of highly devoured, or sorry, not devoured, a lot of highly desired 4 stars here that people are going to be after. Nothing we can do about this, guys. That is the sad and unfortunate part. Maybe they take pity on us. Maybe they give us multiple banners with Abby with some of the 4 stars on rate up, but I don't think they're going to. I hate to say this, but I'm gonna warn you guys, rolling a triple SR rate up, maybe get your 1 copy and get out. Don't keep rolling that hoping for NP5. The reason I say that is these units probably will have another banner at some point. Wait for that other banner because it's highly likely to be better than this one. Again, I've had to roll a triple split SR rate up before. It's not pretty if you just want one of the units. With regards to Abby herself as a foreigner, a lot of people seem to shit on her, totally overlooking the fact that she's an AoE buff strip machine. She's got 50% charge. She puts people to sleep. So yeah, her overall damage might not be the greatest, but it's not bad either. I think a lot of people are very quick to, like, you know, look at these lists and be like, oh, her damage sucks. And it's like, yeah, you were saying, like, that is with all of her buffs on 1 unit, but still, it's not the worst, not by any means. I think the issue here is that she will not deal this amount of damage to all the units in a wave. That's just to the 1 that she has debuffed, but still, I think she's perfectly solid, perfectly serviceable, and like I said, a unit with 50% charge basically can't be bad. And I'm not saying that just to say that. I'm saying that from personal experience using her. She might not be the greatest. She's not worthy of the hate that she gets, and I don't understand why people do hate on her. So again, she can be a very solid, serviceable foreigner for you, especially in an AoE capacity. And Tomoe Saber, I like her. She is a girl that I like to say, a girl with big crits. She definitely can pop off for you. I think the biggest issue that everybody has with her is her loop ability. That is something that needs to be addressed. Even with double Castoria and a 3rd support, yes, she can loop, but it is not the prettiest thing in the world. And so, yeah, I kind of agree. If you need more than just double Castoria in order to loop, you kind of need help looping, and you're not the most fluid looper, right? That's fine. It's not a knock against her, but I think a lot of people would point to like a Muramasa and just be like, woo, and just go right through things with his 50% charge. So they could either give her charge, they could give her more NP gain, they could extend the duration of her arts buff from 1 to 3 turns. Any of those would actually help her out a lot. I just hope they do something for her over time because I really like her. I really would love to use her more. Murasaki Rider is actually, again, another sleeper for a lot of people. I don't think a lot of people actually realize how strong she can be. She is a debuff centric unit, and a lot of people sort of look down on that because debuffs can fail. Not really with hers. She actually has all the tools in her kit that she needs to make her debuffs succeed. So it's one of the reasons that I don't knock on her for that, and why I actually really like her. In a boss fight or a challenge fight, she can really pop off for you, and I think one of her only big issues is actually her survivability. And Fujino can be another nice, interesting challenge archer for you. I think she does have a good amount of survivability and a good blend of damage, especially with that super large niche that she now has. And I think, honestly, it's a lot nicer for her being single target than, like, say, Arthur, who's AoE. You've got the pre-release campaign for Avalon Lefay here. This will be a thing. I guarantee it. They'll be wanting to hype LB6 quite a bit. And like I said, I think during the dev diary tonight, coming out here in 3 minutes, you're probably going to have some kind of discussion of an actual date for LB6. So this should precede that. This should help that hype campaign going on there. And again, your summoning campaign for this is going to be DVR. It does include, I believe, her anniversary CEs, but I may be wrong. I don't actually remember. Again, it's a 50% starting charge C, and I think it's 60% at MLB, if I remember correctly here. Indeed it is. Again, it's okay. It's not the best. It's split stats, not one you have to have. But if you plan to roll this banner because you want DVR and you don't have a 60% CE, hey, that's good, right? Like, there's a lot of people out there, I'd say, that their best 60% CE is just imaginary element. So getting one of those anniversary ones, which tends to be 60%, can be good for you. But let me see here. Yeah, so again, DVR, and just talking about her over time here, It's probably going to be a relatively easy skip for a lot of you guys, focused more on the LB servants, focused more on the meta support units that are coming up. And I don't blame you. DVR is an amazing character. She's still good to this day on JP. One of the things that she's really nice for in an arts comp is not just refunding and looping herself, but it's also going to be charging the rest of the party. So she can help a Castoria get to her NP. She can help a Proto Merlin or something like that get to their NP. And that could be really good if you're in a challenge environment. So it's not just about her charging herself. It could also be used to charge a second DPS to their NP. So again, handling some of these weird structured nodes like your 90 plus content or even your plus nowadays, that sort of tactic can actually be really good for you. It's one of the reasons I really like her. Her damage isn't the best, but her utility has always been strong. So I think still to this day, she is a quality unit for you guys in that regard, and probably one of the better like rider looping options you can get. Now, here's the reason I'm going to tell you all not to roll. You're almost never going to hear me recommend not rolling on something, because again, if you want Da Vinci, roll. That's the thing I will say. But for the smart man, I'm going to say, or woman, that basically as you guys come through here, as you guys start to look at this banner and its proximity to the Lost Belts, the reason I'm going to caution you against rolling is because when you complete Lost Belt 6, you're going to get Habitrot, and Habitrot is really fucking strong. She is really good for that sort of thing and can be an amazing unit for both looping and utility. And she's welfare guaranteeable at NP5 if you have enough FP. So one, save your FP for that, and two, that would be a reason maybe not to roll here, is you're going to get a pretty adequate replacement. And then we get the actual Avalon Lefay Lost Belt release. Again, I'm not going to spoil you guys here, but we will talk about the summoning campaigns. So summoning campaign number 1, this is a very highly sought after banner this year. Out of a lot of the ones I'm going to talk about, I'm going to say this probably ranks, honestly, this is probably top 3 in the year. You know, well, it depends maybe where you include like summer and stuff like that, but still, I would say this is probably top 3 in the year, especially in terms of bang for your buck. The reason why I say that is not just because Morgan Le Fay is good, but because of all the like well-roundedness of the banner and the other stuff that you guys can get here. Honestly, there's a couple things that need to be said about this banner though. Number one amongst that is going to be that, remember, most of these units are actually some of the most rated up units from this point on out, where basically Morgan Le Fay and the Fairy Knights appear so many times already that like you guys have multiple opportunities to roll them. This can be attacked in numerous ways, either by virtue of, again, trying to use something like pity to your advantage, or again, trying to like roll one copy in each of those banners, or again, just trying to slowly accumulate copies of like, say, the 4 stars over time. Another thing that needs to be said here is, guys, be careful with pity being out on an A. You're probably not getting a rate up solo for either of these 2 units. So kind of like you could roll on JP here to isolate one of these 2 4 stars. I don't think you'll be able to do that on an A. I think your split rate up is probably kaput. And so instead, you're just going to, or sorry, your single rate up is kaput. You're just going to end up rolling split instead, and you're not going to have your pick of the litter at that point. So that's going to be a big one. Caster Ku is here. He's actually someone that gets really strong in the buster system as well. And yeah, so this is going to be something you guys should all have at least 1 copy of him. He can pop off even at 1 copy, but yes, this would be an area to get more of him. And just like we talked about with Bedivere, this is an advantage that NA has that JP didn't. You guys will get coins for him when rolling him. JP didn't get coins here, and that made it a little bit more of an issue for them. But I will say this, out of a lot of the units that have come out, like needing a pins and stuff like that, especially for, say, the buster system, Ku Caster is not one of them. He actually operates just fine without his appends. So you guys don't have to worry about it too much if you miss out on that. Again, I wouldn't let that necessarily be the deciding factor in where and how you roll. If he is your husbando, go for it. That's perfectly fine. But for the majority of people, I'm going to say, hey, you know, this is a nice feather in your cap if you do roll, but you don't actually care if you don't. Again, the sort of thing to talk about with him here, though, is that he disappears from this point out Morgan Le Fay and the Fairy Knights do get other banners, but Ku is not included on those subsequent banners. So that is another thing to consider when rolling here. Again, just talking about them, I'm going to talk about each one of the 3 units here, as again, they're both good, or sorry, they're all good, and I'm going to give you guys my 2 cents on this. Let's talk about it here a little bit. Balbon is another interesting one. She's a quick single target archer a la Tristan. Unlike Tristan, her kit to me actually works a little bit better. We're going to talk about why here. She gets the 3 turns of quick performance. She gets self invincibility and evasion for 1 turn and 1 attack. I actually am just going to go ahead and call this one like I see it. This is dumb. Like, this is really dumb. And here's why. Basically, for her on her own, it's redundant. It does basically nothing. If something is attacking her, that is gone. For the party is where this actually has a lot of use, and that is just like Tristan. It's his harp skill, kind of like David as well, where, hey, that's actually going to protect the party from, like, oh shit, here comes the NP on the next turn. You got to be careful to make sure that the boss isn't paired with some other like enemy or something like that that's going to hit before their NP, fuck up your dodge, and then make it so that they actually get damaged. But still, it's another really nice sort of tool in her kit, and another weapon in her arsenal. But otherwise, a lot of how you'll see Balbon getting used over time, and where she's going to get very popular, I would say, is soloing things. She's actually been used quite effectively for that sort of thing, and that's why I said, like, pairing these 2 on the same skill is kind of dumb to me, and I actually wish that they separated them. So that's where my criticism of that's coming in, not that it's not a good thing. It's also going to deal 500 damage to herself without killing, but again, oh yeah, actually it's to the party. I didn't even realize that. I thought it was just to herself, but still, it's definitely a nice thing. On top of this, she gets a 40% quick steroid here. The reason that I talked about like the Tristan buff in hindsight is because Tristan had no quick steroid originally. Tristan had nothing. Even when they give him that, I actually want to say that Tristan's is only 30%. Let me actually double check here. Yeah, this is 30%, which is like, what? So just, again, kind of another issue of like, hey, they just kind of made her better. Again, I'm going to caution you guys against that sort of quick jumpiness, though, on the judgment, just because of the fact that, remember, a unit is not any one part of their kit. It's their entire kit as a whole. So things like attack power and other things definitely factor in. My problem with this is just mostly that everything in her kit seems to kind of be better than Tristan's. So yeah, it's 1 turn invuln, it's 1 attack evasion, which means it does not expire with that turn. It only expires when she's attacked. But yeah, it is still a weird issue for me that they paired them together, basically. But again, that's kind of the issue here, is her steroid is just really strong. You guys are going to see what I'm talking about, though, with the solo capacity, not only in just the hard survival and the evasion, but also the fact that, again, she can seal all enemies in P for 1 turn and their skills, and charge her own gauge by 30%. So now we've got her having survival, but also having the ability to lock the unit down. And in fact, this is a little bit of a power creep from sort of older units that maybe have these effects, where a lot of them, their skills needed to be leveled in order to secure the ability to seal or seal their NP or their skills. She just gets it. It's guaranteed. You don't even have to put a single investment into the skill to get that. Instead, why you're going to level the skill and why it's still going to be really nice for you is you're going to want that 30% charge. So that in and of itself is really, really nice. And then as we get to the 3rd skill here, she absorbs 1 enemy's HP without killing. The amount of HP reduced on the enemies is equal to the amount of HP healed by the user. So now she has a self-heal, which again is going to counteract this 500 damage that she's basically dealing to herself. Especially as you guys can see, this can heal up to 3k. And then has a chance to reduce their NP gauge by 1. So this is where the sort of scalability comes back into play. But guess what? You don't care. You're lowering this skill anyways. Why? Because the 3rd part of this is charges her own NP gauge by another 30%. So yeah, you got to have this at 100% to secure the drain, but you're going to have it at 100% anyways because you need the charge. So I find this to be kind of funny, not just because, yeah, it's sort of, they gave it to her on a skill that you were already going to lower regardless, but also because you've got another 30% charge here, making her a 60% charger. Hey, what's Tristan? Oh, 50%. And he has the demerit that it seals his own NP for 1 turn, so this can't be used on the same turn that he NPs. See what I mean? It's kind of like they just kept making it the same unit, just better. And I'm like, really? You guys can see she can drain the enemy, she can charge, she can heal herself, she can invuln, she can skill seal, she can NP seal. Starting to see the solo capacity yet? She gets magic resistance EX, riding A for an additional 10% quick performance, territory creation A for an additional 10% arts performance, and you guys will note she does still have the 2 arts cards. All good hit counts there. Not the best in NP gain rate, but again, with the charges, you're not gonna care. And again, her 3rd skill here is going to be anti-alter ego attack damage aptitude. Honestly, not necessary. You guys don't have to spend the coins in this if you don't want, but if you roll a lot of copies, there you go. You'll have that if you desire it. But I'm going to say primarily you're going to be going after the mana loading, or especially the extra attack finesse if you're using her in that solo capacity. Her NP is 6 hit, single target, quick. It ignores evasion for 1 turn, deals damage to 1 enemy, inflicts curse status for 1000 damage for 5 turns to them. And then her overcharge effect is inflicts evil curse status for 5 turns to them, which doubles, actually triples the curse damage on the unit because of that. So really nice. Honestly, her kit overall would be strong in a nutshell just based off that. But again, how a lot of people have started to use units like Balbon, or again like Barghest, as we've talked about, is they've started to pair them with healing command codes in that solo scenario. And you might be thinking, well, Cad, those healing command codes don't heal that much. How am I supposed to actually stay alive during a boss just, you know, hitting really hard and pummeling me? I'm so glad you asked that, chat. Wow, you're paying so much attention, and I love you. Basically, the way that this is supposed to work is you guys are going to, later this year, going to get a very nice rerun Halloween event, and it's going to have this craft essence purchasable in the shop as an old CE. It's going to be welfare. I highly recommend you pick this up. Why? Well, for starters, it is all HP scaling. Secondly, it increases healing received at MLB by 75%. So, that ability that heals 1000 HP now heals 1750. It's practically doubling a lot of your healing. Start throwing that with all of your command codes on. Start doing that with her, again, 3000 heal off the 3rd skill here. And you start going, oh wow, okay, this unit is just not dying. And Kidu can have another insane heal as well. And that's why people are using these units to solo. They're like, their damage performance isn't bad. That's nothing to sneeze at either. It's just one of those deals where it's like, holy crap, yeah, no, their kit is actually really good for what it calls for. Again, the Surtur Recollection quest that JP had, I soloed with my Fairy Knight Tristan, and she was not terribly strong at the time. She just was very well invested and it worked. Again, you guys can see her NP damage at NP1 is actually really just not that good on the outset. Like, crap, Robin Hood's just gonna flat out beat her, right? But Robin Hood can say that for pretty much anyone on this list right now. Robin Hood at 50k is sitting here, and you've got Demia at the highest at 47 at NP1. So this is kind of the problem with a lot of this, is Robin Hood basically can just pop off. But even taking someone like him out of the equation, there's other units like, say, Urail against males, where you go like, oh, hey, okay, they can really do solid work. The reason you're going to want her is probably waifu, I assume, for a lot of you. But even if you take that out and look at it from a gameplay perspective, the reason you still want her is the kit. It has nothing necessarily to do with just the specific overall damage output. It's going to be you sitting here going like, man, this unit can't really easily be stopped. So I'm going to say that, yeah, that is really nice for her. Especially compared against, like, say, Tristan. She's honestly in a much better spot at this point, sort of for Tristan's relative lack of survivability. He does have his Harp of Healing, but he doesn't have a hard invuln on it. He does get the removal of mental debuffs, which is nice. And actually, I think, yeah, there you go. They upgraded it to be quick, and then now it's just all party debuffs. And again, he does get a little bit of a heal on that, but his is only 1,000. He still gets the NP seal, but unfortunately, it's on himself. He gets block 50 charge instead of 2 split up 30%. He removes one enemy's buffs. This is a feather in his cap. This is where he really kind of shines. His ability to sort of just tell you no if you're an annoying boss that's got a lot of stuff. So he can kind of be used to sort of invuln pierce or something like that, but not against a boss that's got something that's unremovable, right? Again, he's still got sure hit though, just like her. And again, now he has ignore defense. So there are some reasons to like Tristan still. He's no slouch himself, but it's just one of those deals where, damn, Baobon really has that sort of new age look that they're trying to go for, where she's just kind of got all those nice bells and whistles to really work well. And that's why she got criticized by me when she first came out. Not that she's bad, just more that she's just power creep. She is definitely solid in that regard, and yeah, she could be your kind of single target archer of the future if you wish to go down that path. She's not going to be Buster, she's not going to be arts for you, but you don't care. She's going to handle what she needs to for you, and the only thing you've got to watch out for is really annoying boss gimmicks that might interfere with that. So now we get on to Barcast. Barcast, another interesting one. Again, both of these units, chat, I believe they are story locked, I want to say? Yeah, they're story locked. I was like, I couldn't remember if they were limited or story locked, but so Barcast, another interesting one. She got popular for exactly the same reason. She's another unit that kind of just holds up over time. Her NP damage is actually probably one of the biggest criticisms of her, and you're not going to care. Because just like with Baobon Sith, Barcast is a monster in a good way. She's got a triple buster deck, making her a gorilla. That already in and of itself is strong. But then as we start looking at her skills here, she increases her own attack by 18% for 3 turns and increases buster performance on Sunlight Battlefield for 3 turns. This is the thing that she is missing from really truly being dominant right now against, say, Gawain, her counterpart. Gawain has the ability to, quote, bring the sun. She doesn't yet, but she probably will at some point. So again, that is another interesting thing for her. She's got up to 28% extra sunlight buster, which sort of is screaming, hey, upgrade me. Also, numeral the Saint B, so it's not the EX version or anything like that. So yeah, I think this is probably going to get that treatment somewhere down the line. She gets Wild Rule A, and this is definitely one of the sort of centric abilities that she has, which is increases her own buster performance for 3 turns, up to 30% at rank 10 of the skill. She's going to grant herself Survival the Fittest buff for 3 turns as well, which what Survival the Fittest does, it recovers your own HP by 1,000 whenever you normal attack. So it's not going to be your NP, but it will include your extra attack. It's also going to remove 1 latest buff from the enemy whenever you normal attack. So again, for 3 turns, you are just every time you attack going to keep stripping the enemy of buffs. So if you have a very buff happy boss or something like that, like, oh, I don't know, King Protea, all of a sudden you're just keeping it down. You just keep stealing all of those HP ups. They're gone, and the boss can't actually pull off the gimmicks that it wants to. I've actually watched her in a I believe a Grail front against a very crit happy boss just keep stealing all the crit buffs. The boss had nothing, and thus she was not getting crit at all, and it was hilarious to watch. And then again, if successfully removed, the buff has a 500% chance to reduce their defense by 10% for 3 turns. So she further punishes them by giving them stacking defense down for 3 turns, which is freaking hilarious to watch, because it just means that she's going to keep hitting harder and harder and harder against every boss that she can remove buffs on. I think the only weakness of this skill is just that it's a 3-turn duration with a 6-turn cooldown, so you're going to be waiting for it for 3 turns to come back. But again, in a solo environment, that's all you got to do, is you just got to make sure that you can last those 3 turns to get back, and she does have the means to do so. Her third skill here reduces the party's damage taken for 3 attacks, 3 turns. So again, it's a damage cut, not a hard defense. And again, it's up to 1,000 attack power, or sorry, 1,000 attack, basically 1,000 damage of the attack reduced for the next 3 attacks. She also grants herself a regeneration buff for 3 turns, which is going to give her NP gain, or sorry, NP charge of 15% each turn at rank 10. So you're going to want to lure this if you can, just to get that nice flat even charge. That way, every couple of turns, she's going to be sort of popping off even with this too. Again, another issue here is going to be the 7-turn duration, or sorry, 7-turn cooldown, but it is what it is. She gets magic resistance C here for some debuff resistance and madness enhancement A+. This isn't EX, but it's as damn close as you can get without being a berserker yourself. So really, really good. And again, she also gets anti-alter ego attack damage aptitude for her third skill. I'd say this one's probably less useful than Balbon, since Balbon's more of a single target, but still definitely can have uses where this could be a thing. I even mentioned King Protea and fighting against her at a certain point, so yeah. Again, her Noble Phantasm here, though, is another actual really broken part of her. It's a 5-hit AoE NP that deals damage to all enemies. It increases the HP by 3,000 for 5 turns. Now, the key here, chat, with HP up versus healing is basically that HP up acts as an instant heal. So that is a 3,000 instant heal. Unlike healing, though, let's say you were only missing 2,000 health. With healing, you would only get 2,000. With HP up, you get 3,000. It basically heals you to full and then increases your health by another 1,000. So it's increasing your upward limit as well as healing you. It's always better basically as a result of that to have HP up versus just straight healing. This is also going to reduce her own skill cooldowns by 1. So that is going to mean that every time she NPs, you don't have to wait as long for that second and third skill to come back for her to be able to utilize her really awesome skills basically for kind of shitting on bosses. So that is really good there. She also gets Buster Performance of 1 turn activating first to 20%. So basically her NP into a BB chain can be good, or you could do Buster into an NP chain and basically hope that again each one of these removes a buff, which would stack a defense down on the enemy prior to the NP going off. It's up to you to determine what you want to do in that regard, but there's still a lot of other stuff you can do. So I'd say Barcast basically has 2 issues. Number 1 is, yeah, the fact that she doesn't bring the sun. Number 2 is the fact that she doesn't actually have hard defense. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but basically she doesn't have a dodge, she doesn't have an invuln, and she doesn't have a guts. So anything that Barcast goes toe-to-toe against needs to not have a powerful enough NP or crits to be able to yeet her. That being said, the solution a lot of people use, they just grail their Barcast. And shit, even I have a level 91 on JP and it's worked out really well. But I didn't grail her for gameplay, I grailed her more because I really like Barcast. So it is what it is, but I'm just gonna say again, that is one of the weaknesses of her kit. Still, I have absolutely sold the crap out of certain things with Barcast and just laughed the whole way to the bank. As long as you're not dealing with a boss that's like actually effective against her, you should be fine. And again, like I said, her ability to sort of just shit on certain servants, remove their buffs, has made her really powerful in that solo environment, in Grail fronts, in any type of challenge environment that she thinks that she can really perform well in. So I do recommend Barcast, at least to that extent. She might not be your best AoE damage saber, but she might be the unit that can go the distance for you. And then we get to Morgan Le Fay. Oh, Morgan Le Fay. How much do I have to say about you? Okay, so chat, for Morgan Le Fay, she's a very interesting one. You're gonna notice right here off the bat, she's an AoE berserker, she's buster based. She doesn't have a triple buster deck. In fact, she has Mama Raiko's deck. She's got double arts, double buster. I actually like this more in her case. This makes it really easy to get to an NP. Her hit counts are all solid. Her NP gain rate is not good, but it gets adjusted, and you'll see. Let's go ahead and go through the deck, and I'm going to talk to you guys about it as we go. She increases her party's attack for 3 turns, charges her own NP gauge, and reduces all enemies' defense for 3 turns, 30% on the defense down, 30% on the self-charge, and 20% on the party attack up. So a lot of people looked at her and they said like, huh, this is actually kind of similar to like Castoria's stuff. Is Morgan Le Fay a support? Well, we'll see. Let's get to the second skill here. Her second skill here is again a charges one ally's gauge by 20%, so it's targetable charge, and the party's NP generate by 25% for 3 turns. This is not as strong as Castoria's, but the charge is again roughly the same amount. So yeah, this is where a lot of that came from, as people started looking at her charisma, people started looking at her her targeted charge, and people started looking at her NP gen and were like, wow, she's pseudo supporty. To me, she's really not, but yeah, she does work well in a scenario where you're not just 3-turning and you need to like get people to their NPs at selective moments. And we're going to talk about how that is here in a second. But that does make her really adaptable as a unit, and it's one of the things I really like about her. Skill's also only on a 5-turn cooldown, which is amazing. Her third skill here is Beyond the Furthest End, and it's a self-guts of 1 time 3 turns, critical star absorption for 3 turns. Now, normally when we see Berserkers, you guys know it's same thing as like Avengers. They have a really low star gather rate naturally, and thus as a result, like absorption needs to be fairly strong on them for it to actually be able to pull stars against a competitive class that maybe has a high star gain rate. You don't have to worry about that in Morgan Le Fay. Why? Morgan Le Fay gets 5,000% star absorption. That'll do. That is definitely enough for her to get the job done. She increases her own crit damage for 3 turns here by 30%. Again, not too broken, but still definitely welcome. She grants herself a regeneration buff for 3 turns. That is, again, going to reduce all enemies' attack for 1 turn every turn for 3 turns. This means as she moves between waves, she'd still keep doing this. And reduces their critical attack chance 1 turn every turn for 3 turns. So I actually think that this is really strong, because this is basically going to make a unit not hit as hard, which is really nice for a Berserker, and not crit as much, which is really nice for a Berserker. And then on top of that, it's still going to be a star bomb of 15 stars. So yeah, she has the sort of the wombo combo of absorption, crit damage, and star bomb all in 1 skill. Really, really nice skill there to have. It's a whole lot going on there, but you're definitely going to want to invest in it some. However, if you get down to the point where you've just rolled Morgan Le Fay when LB6 comes out, maybe you don't have all the materials you need, I'd say this is a skill that you don't take to max right away. That's typically what a lot of people did when she came out on JP, because we didn't have access to the free quest. People focused on the 1st and 2nd skill, not the 3rd skill in that regard. Looking at her kit here, she gets Madness Enhancement B, so not too much, but still enough. Magic Resistance A, Item Construction EX for debuff success rate by 12%. Territory Creation B is another welcome addition to help her arts cards. And then Fey Eyes increases her own critical attack chance resistance by 20%. So, chat, already enemies have a 20% reduction if you've lowered the skill for chance to crit. And typically the way crit chance works for enemy NPCs, it actually tends to happen in holistic numbers. So basically these 2 amounts should be the amount that actually would impact that. If you get it at 20%, that's basically like, you know, let's say an enemy had a 5 chance to crit. This would functionally as a -20 be like, all right, it's -2, and thus they only have a 3 chance to crit. Most enemies in the game, as far as I understand, without crit buffs are only like a 3, and thus as a result, unless it does something to get higher, even this right here would almost make it impossible. But oh wait, then when you include this sort of thing, she's not getting crit by a lot of the units in the game. So basically you need some of either the highest echelons at 5 like assassins, or you need someone that actually has a crit chance increase to help that out. This is why Morgan Le Fay almost never gets crit, and it's actually hilarious to watch in progress. Now I've got another point to make about that. Hey, remember Berserker's 3rd append? Remember how useless it can kind of be in some situations? It is doubly useless for Morgan Le Fay, given the fact that it's basically not worth the coins, because already with both this trait and her 3rd skill, you can pretty much make enemies not crit you. So yeah, I don't think this actually serves too much of a point basically for her. Her Noble Phantasm is where it gets real spicy. It is 6-hit AoE NP, okay? Now, the thing I'm going to point out about it is it increases her own damage against Round Table Knights or Fey enemies by 50% for 1 turn. So it is a power mod. Not super effective. The thing to understand about this and why it is significant is this means that it impacts not just her NP, it impacts her cards too. This is actually like a Jack versus Gilgamesh situation. Gilgamesh has a super effective modifier that makes his NP specifically hit harder. It's good because super effective modifiers don't multiply, or sorry, are multiplicative with everything else in the game. There's nothing else that's in their category basically for being additive with it. So that means they always hit hard. Power mod's good though, because due to that 1 turn duration, it means it affects not just the NP, but everything that you do on that turn as well. So really, really nice in that regard. And again, it's double niche there. She's going to then deal damage to all enemies, inflict a curse status of 1,000 for 5 turns to them, which in and of itself is not that strong. But then the thing I really like is this line right here. This overcharges the party's NP by 1 stage 1 time for 3 turns. Why do I like this? Hey, who here remembers Himiko? Who here remembers the Invincible comp? Guess what? Now all of a sudden you have an AoE NP that's able to facilitate the Invincible comp for the party. Makes her really good at challenge content. This is sort of the new era way of doing it, and how you're able to blitz down entire like sort of servant gauntlet challenges and stuff like that with Morgan Le Fay. Basically the way the Invincible comp works is it abuses overcharge mechanics to make both Merlin give more crit stars, as well as Castoria get far more stacks of solemn defense to protect the party. And essentially what it does is it makes it so that the party doesn't take damage once that comp gets going, as long as you don't screw up the cadence somehow. So due to this, this is another rank of overcharge, and this is thus another rank, another stack of solemn defense that you get for that 3-turn duration. It makes it even harder for the party to take any damage to begin with. But if you thought that was over, just wait, there's more. She deals extra damage to man attribute enemies, and this one is super effective. So her NP is going to basically pop off against the multitude of man attribute units and enemy types in the game, and that makes her really good. I've seen a lot of people criticize this as saying it's redundant with Koyanskaya. There's no such thing as redundancy in FGO. We can always hit harder, especially now thanks to the 90+ and ++ nodes. So I really like this. It's a really, really nice thing for her to have, especially with her other 2 niches. The other 2 are not terribly big, so the fact that she gets this on top of it is really, really good for her. The problem and sort of the criticism of Morgan Le Fay hasn't been that she's not good and that her kit isn't amazing. The criticism has been that if the enemy isn't man traded, Morgan Le Fay doesn't do a lot of damage, and that is true. I will admit to that. Sadly, this is an issue, but honestly, with Oberon, unless we're talking ++ content, we don't care. Most of the time we can brute force it to work, and it becomes, again, not a real issue for most of us. So it is something that you will want to consider for like the amount of copies you want to roll. An NP2 of Morgan Le Fay is almost automatically just going to make that better. You can Grail your NP1 Morgan Le Fay, that'll help out. I've done the same on JP, but it's not going to replace just having more NP levels of her. So again, as you guys can see here, with no niches, she's only at 24k. That is not terribly strong, especially in the face of someone like, say, an Arjuna Alter doing 37. But second we start looking at the niches here, you have Round Table Knight at 36, or Fey at 36, Man Attribute at 40, and then Either Or at 60, which is really, really, again, strong. So I think the real reason to use Morgan Le Fay is not just the fact that she is, again, going to be your first 50% charging AoE Berserker. It's also going to be the fact that she is really good in challenge content down the stretch. So You guys don't have to go crazy about the damage. It is a concern with her, but ultimately in most cases we can make it do enough for her to really pop off. The fact that she's a 50% charger, the fact that she's so good in the challenge content is going to be why you want her. That being said, most of you guys right now are going to scream in chat that no, you actually just want her because she's waifu, and that's perfectly fine. But again, to me personally, I think you're fine at NP1, but there will be some scenarios where it doesn't quite cut it and it won't be a one-size-fits-all solution. Second we start talking NP2 or higher, that becomes much more of a possibility. So keep that in mind, doubly so if the thing is man traded. But again, we've sort of seen this, guys. If the enemy isn't man traded, that's where, you know, down the stretch here in JP, we started to look at it as like, oh, if it's man traded, Buster works really well against it due to Koyanskaya's buffs. If it's not man traded, maybe we consider looking at like Quicken Arts as other solutions, because Buster's not going to hit nearly as hard as it would otherwise. Having those man attributes is something that really allows Koyanskaya to pop off, and we'll talk about that when we get to her. So that is your first banner. Again, my only reminder to you guys is that you guys can delay rolling these units until later, especially if they're in the way of you rolling Koyanskaya and Oberon, especially due to the fact that they don't necessarily get nearly as many banners. So they will get a banner actually right after Oberon, so you don't have to worry too much depending on your plans, but it's up to you. And again, sort of the willingness to spend money on the game versus trying to tackle it free to play as to how you want to sort of structure your role plans. Again, we get to the interlude campaign 16 here. We do get a summoning campaign with it. Again, this one's just going to be a straight up one with Canis and Anastasia. There's not too much to talk about here other than Anastasia. I still really like her. I still think she can be an amazing caster for us down the line. The biggest knock and issue with her is that she doesn't have an NP interlude, and she is way overdue given the status of the rest of the classes, or sorry, the rest of the units in her class. I think pretty much all the other AoE casters at this point have received some kind of love except Anastasia. I think she's gonna get one. It's probably gonna be story related, but we just have to wait, so we'll see. Canis is another one. She's gotten better over time. She actually has gotten a charge skill that does help her, but it's a 20% charge skill. It's not a 30%, so she's not going to be perfectly fluid with the sort of Koyanskaya Oberon system, but she still can be made to 3 turns. She still can work. If you like her, go for her. She's story locked. She's going to be hard to get. Otherwise, you're probably going to be looking at something like the SR ticket that happens again over a year from this banner. All right, then we get Avalon LaFay Summoning Campaign 2. This is not part 2. This is not 6.2. This is 6.1.2. This is the second banner of 6.1. Why is it significant? Hey, did you not roll Castoria this year? Do you regret that? Guess what? This is why I cautioned people about not rolling Castoria when she first came out. Not rolling Castoria at that original anniversary banner means now you had to roll here, which is way closer to Koyanskaya and Oberon, way too close for comfort. Nothing you guys would want to have to do. That being said, if you don't have Castoria, I 100% recommend it. It is literally one of the best units you can pull for your account, period. And you will thank yourself for having her. This is going to be the return of Brynn. Again, Brynn is another unit that has held up well over time, mostly due to the fact that they gave her 30% charge. That 30% charge can be doubled up in a Koyanskaya system. Combined with a 20% mana loading would mean that you guys would be able to 3-turn her from a 50% CE starting point with double Koyanskaya and Oberon. That makes her hit really hard, especially if the unit is Brynhilder's beloved. She is going to really be a solid single target Lancer for you. And again, due to the fact that she is Buster synergistic, I think you're going to get to see a little bit of a revival of her, at least until they finally end up buffing Tamamo Lancer down the line. Umu Caster is also going to come back here. Again, if you guys don't have her, she's another really solid one. She's a little bit weirder in the Koyanskaya system only because of the long duration of some of her skills, but she can still work really well. I think it's only her 3rd skill that can't be doubled up. Again, her 50% charge can be, her 2nd skill here can be at a 5-turn cooldown. It's just the third skill being 7 turns due to the fact that it has guts on it is why. The issue here, though, it's a 3-turn targetable attack up to 50%. So damn, if you could double that up, that would have been really good. In fact, part of me wonders when you see stuff like this, they planned this. I swear they planned this. They knew not to allow certain thresholds below certain skill points on this. It's the only way I can describe it. Otherwise, you would have started to see like some really broken shit. I think they had originally planned to actually do a cooldown meta basically at some point. And so that's why I look at this and I go, wow, that's actually really well done. All the other skills are able to be doubled up, just not this one unless you use something like Atlas Academy. If you use Atlas Academy, you're not plug suiting a third support, so it is a nice trade-off. Doesn't Edison give a cooldown skill as well? Yes, Edison does, as does Maid Alter and Tamamo herself. But still, it is an interesting thing to note. But yeah, both these units are good. I think I really like Umu Caster as well due to the fact that she has Invuln Pierce on her NP. She does hit relatively hard as far as AoE casters go. I think she's second right now, only behind Da Vinci Caster. Again, you can maybe make an argument that, you know, Helena is someone that can hit harder than her, especially due to the fact that Helena is a 4-star. So some people might have more copies of her, but still, it's another really good one. And then on top of that, you guys are going to get other units available here. Primarily, Estrella is going to be the one that a lot of people are going to focus on. Just keep in mind with this banner, it's probably going to be split so that basically you just have 2 side by side rather than any sort of weird schedule rotating them down the line. And looking at this, hey, remember how I talked about that one CE was kind of like Battle Olympia? Yep. So again, Battle Olympia is one of the best 60% Cs in the game. Why? Oh, okay, it is only 10%. I was thinking Battle Olympia was 12. Thinking of a different one then. But still, Buster and Art's performance of 10%, battle charged at 60% gauge, all attack scaling. That is exactly what I like to see. That is a really good 60%. So not only that, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it's not like the artwork is bad either, chat. If you have to stare at a craft essence all the time, that's a good one to stare at. But still, yeah, so that is a definitely good banner for people to roll, but a lot of people are going to look at this and they're just going to go, that's bait. I'm not touching that because we've got anniversary coming up. And I understand. So now we get to Lost Belt Release Part 2. The good news here is I don't have to talk nearly as much about these banners, but they're still worthy of mentioning. Why? Cat gets to go on a little bit of a rant again. So we've got Fairy Knight Lancelot and Percival. We'll go ahead and talk about Percival first here. A lot has been said about Percival, I'd say, sort of in the comparisons to Fion especially, but definitely also in being compared to Summer Melt, or even Vitra for that matter, even your SSR AoE Looper Lancers. And the thing that's crazy about Percival is what I'm going to start with right now. I'm actually going to go to the damage list and show you that out of the get-go, not talk about his kit first. Why? Because I want you to see something before you look at the kit. Before you look at the kit, look and see Percival is right here. He's pretty much tied with Fion and as good as Melt basically with her third skill activated. Yes, a lot of people forget that Melt Lancer kind of has this issue and that this is including the third skill in her calculations. Still, a lot of this is interesting because Percival is kind of like the Valks. He doesn't necessarily have to pop anything to get stronger over time. This is just how Percival is every turn. So that is an intriguing thing to denote about him. He's roughly on par with the other 3. Why do I point that out? Let's go look at the kit. Starters, he's got double buster, so he's got a little bit more firepower here, not as much loop ability, and it's only a 2-hit arts, and with not that good of an NP gain rate. It's not a huge issue, but yeah, I think I would have rather seen the third arts card here to be better. Looking at his first skill here, he gets a 30% arts up at rank 10, with again 20% charge and 20% NP damage. So both his steroids right here on the outset that you're gonna pop turn 1. My problem with his kit overall is also this skill. It's the fact that they paired the charge skill with his 2 steroids, and it kind of needs to be popped turn 1. I wish they didn't do that. I wish they had separated it, and that would have given you a little bit more leeway. So what this means is that, again, it might interfere with sort of the natural order of using support skills on him. Otherwise, you should be fine as long as you can stomach it. Just make sure you don't end up in a situation where you're just shy because you had to use a skill or not use a skill turn 1. The second skill here is, again, going to be a self-taunt of 300% for 3 turns. Okay, it's not often we see a 3-turn taunt, and that actually is kind of nice, considering that in a scenario where he's not killing a wave, like say in a challenge quest, that's actually going to allow him to just get more NP gain. On top of that, when he gets hit, he gets up to 50% more NP gain. I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to lure this skill unless you really like him. The reason why is because this is an easy one not to use a lure on. But that being said, shit, that is still quite a bit. Even assuming it is 50% chat, he's already got 4% from NP charge defense. And if you don't know how this works, this means that the number of hits of an enemy attack, let's say an enemy attacks, let's say it's one of the insects, right? And I think they have like a 5-hit attack. So like just them attacking once is 5 hits. That is 5 times that 4%. That means that would get charged 20%. But wait, if he had that second skill activated at rank 10, that's an additional 50%. That would turn that 4% from a 4% to a 6%. That would change that 20% to a 30%. So yeah, that can be really strong. And that's just one attack. Now, yeah, that is one attack from one of the units that has one of the highest hit counts in the game in terms of enemies, but still, you start thinking about that constructively and you're like, okay, yeah, I could reasonably get somewhere like 6 to 8 hits from an enemy anywhere, depending on their attacks, during a turn in which I'm taunting and all 3 enemies have to hit me. Could definitely be a thing. So in a challenge scenario, his loopability is actually even better. His third skill here, though, is a targetable invuln, which also heals up to 2000. So Percival is not only a unit that is a looper and holds his own for damage against the other 4-star loopers, he's also by far the best tank. That's why Percival's nice. That's why Percival doesn't get knocked as much as, like, say, a Fion. He is a very well-rounded kit. Again, he gets magic resistance B++, riding C+ for some additional quick performance. Not that he really needs that. His third skill is anti-lancer attack damage aptitude. You don't care. Not really that useful to you. Oh, but wait, you thought we were done. We're not. He's a 4-hit AoE arts NP that has invuln pierce before his NP. Shit. Now his kit actually looks really good. He deals damage to all enemies and then recovers 1 ally with the lowest HP relative to their max by 3000. His NP smart heals. It target heals the person that has the lowest percentage of their health remaining. That's really fucking good. Like, holy crap, especially if he's looping, especially for in a challenge thing. So it's not a party-wide heal, but damn, I'll take it, right? Like, he's also going to have an overcharge effect that increases his own NP damage by 20%, activating first. Guess what? This and this both gonna get boosted by Oberon too. So not only does his kit have a lot of well-roundedness, a lot of adaptability, it's actually kind of future-proofed and gonna scale really well. Now I want to take everything of my gushing here about Percival. I want you to take that, ball it up in a nice ball, and throw it out the window. Because none of this matters. Why does none of this matter? Because of this. Because of this. Welcome to my melt rat. So I'm gonna be as fair as I can to Melt here. My issue, in case anyone doubts me here, is not with Melisande herself. I'll probably be rolling a copy myself. My issue is not with the character, it's with the stupidity of the dev's design. And I'm gonna call it like it is. It is stupid. I think anyone could have looked at this unit and been like, huh? What? Why? She didn't need that. Here, allow me to point out one thing right now, just to indicate that you are staring at on screen. There you go. And there's plenty more where that came from. That's just one thing. A trait that she's just immune to pigify. Why? I don't know. Fuck you. That's why. So let's talk about this. The reason Melisande is so strong, the reason she gets me to rant, is because somebody somewhere in Delightworks / Lasengle decided they really wanted to make a unit special. I'm okay with that, but it causes problems when you do that. That's where I'm coming from on this. A lot of people are going to say, Cad, your waifu's Lartoria, your bias is compromised here. I have criticized other units for the same deal. Muramasa included. I've pointed out Kiara being really strong, and you guys are going to sit there and go, oh, but Cad, there's all saber faces in those classes that compete with them. You're right. I don't restrict it to, hey, my waifu is getting trounced. That isn't an issue. My issue, if my waifu is getting trounced, is that my waifu needs to be better. Not that this unit is bad and needs a nerf. This unit doesn't need a nerf. They just went overboard with it. So the issue here at play is that basically they made Melisande too strong. Let's explain why. If you look at her kit already, she already has 2B, 2A. That's again another really nice one. It's good for damage. All of her hit counts are average or above in the case of the quick card. Again, another nice one there. Her NP charge rate here, I'm gonna be honest, this could have been a 0.1 and it wouldn't have fucking mattered. This is still ridiculously good for what it is, and I'm actually surprised that it's not a 0.5. Especially given that we just looked at units that were at 0.5. Her first skill here is again going to increase her own attack for 3 turns, 40%. So that right there is already just one of the most absurd charismas I've ever seen in the game. It's self charisma, it's a self attack up, but that is really strong. I've seen other units that have 40% for 2 turns. I've seen plenty of units that have 30% for 3 turns. I've seen Umu have 50% for 3 turns, like we pointed out there on the caster form of her earlier. Fair enough. Reduces own damage taken by 500 for 3 turns. It's a damage cut. I'm gonna say honestly, this is yet again one of those lines where it's like, she didn't need that at all. Like, there's actually no reason for her to have it. It's just extra. It's superfluous. It's just icing on the cake. Increase own max HP for 3 turns. Also, unnecessary. Did not need it. Totally worthless. So basically, she has a damage cut and a heal on this skill. And now we get to the meat and potatoes. So even if we throw those 2 aspects out, she has a 40% attack up for 3 turns and a 30% NP charge. Okay, on a 6-turn cooldown. Guess what? Playing Sky system, that means we can double this. Second skill, Parry Dancer. I love this skill. Increases on critical star absorption for 3 turns. How much? 5,000%. She's not a fucking berserker. She's not an Avenger. Why does she need 5,000%? This could be 500 and it would already be overkill. 5,000 is just, they copy pasted this from another unit. They had to have. There's no point. I have no idea why it is this strong. This is beyond overkill. If you use this skill, you will never see anyone else in the party get a star as long as Melisande has cards to field for the stars. On top of that, we get critical stars every single turn. I'm okay with this, again, especially when you consider she's the analog to Lancelot. I think that's what they're thinking here. Chat, why don't I go show you guys Lancelot real quick for comparison? Okay, here you go. That's why they gave it to him. I gotta be honest, Lancelot doesn't need this either. This is stupid, but it is what it is. That's why they gave it to him. It's Eternal Arms Mastery, right? And then his third skill is gains critical stars and critical damage every turn. So they take Lancelot's second and third skill and make it a skill. 10 stars per turn, 10 star bomb up front is what it is, right? So it's not that this in and of itself is power creep. It's that when you look at Lancelot, he has to have 2 skills to do what Melisande can do in 1. Fine, fair enough. I'll leave this skill alone. Also on a 5-turn cooldown, so it can be doubled up. Our third skill here, and this one's where a lot of my criticism is housed. Ray Horizon. So to explain this skill, Melisande is unique so far in FGO. There's nobody else that has a skill like this. In fact, it was hilarious because when this first came out, when Melisande was first a thing, you could actually break the game using this skill and get it to abuse it, and I'll explain why. So what this skill does is if she is in stage 1 or 2 of her ascensions, right? Like if you have her either in this stage or this stage, she will transform into stage 3 when you press this skill. Honestly, I kind of hate that just for people that maybe like one of the other ascension forms, but I get it. I understand what they're trying to do here. I just maybe wish that this didn't actually impact the ascension form aesthetic or something. It charges her own NP gauge, base 50 up to 100%. Wow. Wow. That is strong. Grants herself invincibility 1 turn. I am going to call this one out. That has always been Lancelot's biggest issue, is Lancelot is a monster for critting and looping and keeping going. He is a buzzsaw. Lancelot doesn't have any survivability. This is stupid. This doesn't need to be here. That being said, it's power creep, I understand. But that's not the worst part of this skill. But we'll talk about it here in a second. Stage 3 gives her increase on NP damage for 3 turns, 30%. That's strong. That scales with Oberon. That could be doubled up. Holy crap, right? In fact, by turn 3, you will get this back in a Koyanskaya setup. In fact, you would get it back on turn 2, but let's not talk about that. So where's my issue? The reason this sort of thing is important is because, you know what, we'll talk about the rest of the kit before I get back to that. She's got magic resistance B, she's got territory creation B+. Again, arts performance here, and you might be thinking, well, that's weird, she's a buster unit, why does she need that? Is she a buster unit, chat? She gets anti-lancer attack damage aptitude. Honestly, probably not the best use of your coins. You're probably better off with the second and first skill, but honestly, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And I'm just going to say this is not necessary, but due to the fact that people with a really strong Melisande do use her to neutral loop, yeah, this could be beneficial to you. Just depends on how many copies you roll. This is why I say, is she a buster unit, chat? In stage 1 and 2, her NP is single target arts, 5 hits. Deals damage to 1 enemy, increases their damage taken by 5 turns. This is Lancelot's NP. It's also a 10 crit star bomb. But, unlike Lancelot, she increases her own NP gen rate for 3 turns, activating first by an additional 20%. This means that this stacks, and if she loops and keeps doing this, she keeps getting even more NP gain, making looping even easier. If you thought that was dumb, remember how I said this is a single target arts NP? Not anymore. Not in stage 3. Now it's an AoE buster NP. With Invuln Pierce before NP, deals damage to all enemies, inflicts burn, which again, hey, you remember that totally unnecessary line? Yeah, let's just get rid of that. Totally not necessary. And then increases her own buster performance for 3 turns, activating first of 20%. Guess what? This means in a Koyanskaya and Oberon system, you looping, this just keeps stacking. Chat, allow me to explain the Koyanskaya Oberon setup to you. I like breaking it down in terms of brackets. So, the way it typically works is you have 2 Koyanskayas and an Oberon. The Oberon tends to work by getting rotated in on turn 3. That means Oberon himself on turn 3 is responsible for 70% of the charge. You need 300% charge over 3 turns in order to 3 turn, right? In order to be able to move through the waves in 1 turn each, the 3 waves, you need 300% charge. Oberon's going to provide 70%. That's part of the reason he's so strong. Turn 2 typically is handled by the double Koyanskaya 50% charges. There you go. That's already spoken for. And now a lot of units have to solve for the missing 130%. They need that. They need to figure out what to get. So they've got to get 30% on the final turn, and they've got to get some combination of 100% on turn 1. In a lot of cases, this can be done with a K-scope and an append, or this can be done by virtue of charge skills, especially with Koyanskaya being able to double that up. That makes it even easier. So now's the part where I tell you, remember how Melisande has the 30% skill, and it's again a 6-turn cooldown, so you can double it up. That means you've got 30% on the back end to work with Oberon. It also means you've got 30% on the front end. Well, she can also have an append. And right there, Melisande can 3-turn in the Koyanskaya Oberon system with a 50% CE. But that's not all. Because as you guys look at the skill that's currently on the screen, I only need 50% to be able to 3-turn, right? From 0. Rank 1 of this skill is 50%. You could literally not invest in this skill, and she would be a Black Grail looper. But we all know you're going to max the skill out, both for the cooldown and because of how strong it is. That means Melisande has an additional 50% charge to spare. She loops from negative 50% charge. Why? I have no fucking clue. This is why I say that they just went overkill with this unit. This unit absolutely is still a Black Grail looper right here. Right here. And that's with no investment other than the append. Guess what? Don't have the append? Cool. Fine. Level it to rank 5. And you've still won. Part of the reason Melisande is so strong isn't her NP damage. If you actually come back and look at it, chat, she's only at 24k. And again, that's basically there without her NP damage on the 3rd turn. Here's the problem. In a Koyanskaya and Oberon setup, this skill, you're going to pop it turn 1. Then she's going to be in stage 3, which means you can't pop it again for an additional 100% charge, unless you were back then in the broken stage of her, where you could actually basically get away with popping the skill, but it didn't transform her stage. There was a glitch where you could do that, but I think they fixed it. Anyways, assuming that's the case, you've popped skill 3 here on turn 1. That has turned you into the 3rd stage of Ascension. Now you can only get this version of the skill, but because it's on a 5-turn cooldown, you got it back in the Koyanskaya system, which means you can get an additional 30% NP damage in this setup. That means this 24k becomes 31k. Doesn't stop there, chat. That 31k is neutral. That 31k gets scaled even harder by End of a Dream EX here, which doubles all sources of NP damage. Guess what? This gets doubled. This, Oberon's first skill, gets doubled. Doesn't stop there. this gets doubled. These numbers don't even come close to indicating how much damage Melisande does. That's my gripe. Melisande, out of all of these units that you see on the screen, is the one that absolutely can start with the Black Grail and absolutely kind of needs it for damage output, but still just gets dumb. Okay? And I'm gonna say, even if you don't have the Black Grail, you can still make her hit really hard with all those buffs. So the problem here is that this can't touch Black Grail. This can't touch Black Grail. This can't touch Black Grail, and this can't touch Black Grail. Actually, that can't either, right? So the only other units that possibly could would be your like arts loopers, basically. And I'm gonna tell you guys, yeah, you might be able to pull that off. It's not gonna be nearly as effective as Melisande. So her other Buster contemporaries aren't even as close. This is why I've said if they basically want to ever get people to roll for these other units based off the gameplay, you know, not just, oh, hey, I really like this unit, she's my waifu, right? If you want people to roll for other units, like say Karna, for instance, one, you've got to fix that man's charge skill, and two, Jesus Christ, he's not even close to her in damage. Like, it would have to be a divine enemy. And even on top of that, you know, she does everything else, like all the bells and whistles that the other ones do outside of their niches. She literally has invuln pierce on her NP. Okay, the only thing she doesn't do is ignore defense, right? She doesn't death proc someone either. It's just, that's kind of why she's so strong. So don't take this rant as me telling you not to roll for her. This rant is me telling you you're dumb not to. Pretty much everybody in the game should roll Melisande because of how they've designed her. Doesn't mean that you can't. Hi, my name's Khadroth. I don't have Melisande on JP. I've been fine. But I've also, in a large way, only been fine because I have a super Lartoria on JP. So if you're just looking for best bang for your buck, you've got a viable single target and AoE Lancer right here. This unit is functionally future-proofed. This is another Space Ishtar type of situation where, yeah, the devs just went a little too hard and over-embellished a unit, and now they're kind of scrambling to try to make the other units viable in comparison. I don't know if the devs have realized it yet with Melisande. I don't know if they care, but yeah, the AoE Lancers are in trouble. They definitely tried, at least with Ereshkigal, giving her NP interlude that, you know, again, jumped her a shit ton due to the super effective Earth modifier. Sadly, even against Earth attributed enemies, she's going to lose against a pound for pound same Melisande. Why? Melisande can just touch Black Grail, which is sort of like the forbidden fruit. She has much more capability to out damage her due to that aspect. And Melisande doesn't care if you're Earth traded. So they've made this one unit so strong that, like I said, chat, if you roll Melisande, I can't in good faith tell you that you need another Lancer, because you don't. You basically have someone that does just about everything you would need. That's why the design is dumb. It's not just that they over embellished, it's that they went so far that they sort of relegated the other units to also Rans. So she's basically stuck with Black Grail. She's not stuck with Black Grail, but her damage will go down quite a bit if you don't have it, and that's just due to her synergy. But still, I think, chat, even if you look at this from this point, right? Even if you take away Black Grail, you've got 24k, which is beating most of the other Lancers on the list. And the reality here is in the proper setup with the proper supports, she's at 31, which is beating everybody outside of niche. That's without Black Grail. Like I said, my intention is to roll MP1 of her, one, because I want to be able to play around with that kit. I don't have it on JP, so I haven't been able to, but I am very familiar with how it works and sort of why it's so busted. We've talked about it numerous times on the channel, but honestly, I also want to be able to show people too, because she's one of those units, kind of like with Muramasa, kind of like with again, like a Space Ishtar, that you'll see a lot of people will, you know, sort of over embellish and over hype, and they're not talking about, you know, just NP1's performance. They're talking about their Grailed, Gold Fode, Mega Waifu NP5 version, and how they're just like neutral looping over everything with a super black Grail and the perfect setup. I'm much more likely to be able to show you guys like, hey, look, this is how an NP1's gonna work for you in still kind of idyllic settings, but like, hey, you didn't go all out on the levels. You didn't go super whaley on it. So that's, you know, me gonna kind of be like, hey, look, yeah, when you guys are saying it loops over everything, it doesn't necessarily. But yeah, I pointed that out when she was first coming out. A lot of people, we didn't have Oberon in the game yet, we didn't have Korean Sky in the game yet, and people were like, Cad, why are you getting upset about this? Why are you talking so much on it? It seems like you have an axe to grind. I already back then could read the writing on the wall and knew that she was going to be a 3-turner in her AoE form. We had people telling me, oh, she won't be able to 3-turn as an AoE, Cad, it's fine. You know, if it had stayed that way, it would have been. It didn't stay that way, and I knew it wouldn't. And now you have the most powerful AoE Lancer in the game. And honestly, one of the better single target Lancers too. So, fuck. Now we can talk about the actual banner now that I've talked about her. You do not have to roll Melisson here. She is not essential for like lotto nodes and stuff like that. She will be there for you. She will be good for you if you do roll her. She will definitely, I think you'll just be almost immediately amazed at how strong she can be. But if your roll schedule is tight, she does get another banner later that year coming out with Tunguska. She is a unit that is super useful in Tunguska. Don't let people overhype her for that though. She is one of several units that is super useful. You can use other people. You do not have to use Melisson. So, I don't think the commemorative campaign had anything. Oh, it did have a summon. Sus Holmes. The sussy detective. So, Sherlock is an interesting one. This is a weird one for me because I now actually get to talk about an unreleased unit on JP. I'm not going to spoil you guys. I'm just going to say, seemingly there will be a unit coming on JP that gives Invuln Pierce to the party on a skill. That is definitely strong, and that definitely does eat a little bit into Sherlock's niche, especially because Sherlock does it with his NP as a support. That unit doesn't. So that might maybe outclass him a little bit, but we'll see. I'm gonna wait until the entire kit for that unit is a thing, and then I will make that judgment. But right now, I'm gonna say Sherlock still is an interesting unit. He has gotten some buffs here that I think do help him, especially his arts up. But ultimately, I think Sherlock is more of a fun unit to use. He's more of an offensive support for challenge content, less so of a necessity. He's the epitome of a very nice luxury unit to have. He can be really cool to use, but you do not have to have him. I'm gonna call this one like I see it and say that this one, for most people, unless you really like Sherlock, is an easy skip. Again, though, you do have the CEs that are with him, his anniversary CEs. I believe this one is a 60% as well, but I may be wrong. Yep, arts and quick performance by 60% each. And again, split stats. So there you go. There's that one for you. But still, yeah, also that is a misnomer. Thank you, fandom, for getting that wrong. And then we get to August, and this was the part that made a lot of people poo their pants. And why did they poo their pants? Because you had this starting August 11th, and you had this starting August 1st. So basically, these two actually overlapped with each other and were very, very close in sequential order. Again, this was 6.3's release. Then we get the 6th anniversary, and obviously no one in chat cares about this banner. It's not like there's any reason to roll here. So the one thing I'm going to point out about this banner, obviously everyone knows who Koyenskaya is at this point. I'm just going to say that Koyenskaya is a meta support. She is a unit that even taking waifu aspects out. I understand a lot of people will roll just because they like her design, they like her personality, or whatever. Maybe they're just into tamamos. That's perfectly fine. Big reason I think a lot of people are going to be concerned is because she is not only a good AoE assassin, but she's also sort of the onset of a new buster meta. She gives a shit ton of buster benefits as well as cooldown, and I think that is the big reason a lot of people wish to roll. They want to have that day one. I've seen a lot of people saying that they want to roll Koyanskaya over Oberon, and I'm going to definitely make that case probably when we get back. The one thing I'm going to mention though is that, yeah, guys, keep in mind, Koyanskaya gets another banner in 6 months after this. I'm not telling you not to roll so much as if you're free to play, if you're on a budget and you don't have the capacity to roll through that onslaught of LB6 and then this, getting Oberon is the bigger prize. He will not come back for a year and a half, and he works with all of your card types, not just Buster. So that's why I've sort of highlighted him to people. He is the best sort of neutral offensive support in terms of like comparing with Waver or Reigns. He just helps the party even more. He gives even more charge. That's the reasons that I've told you guys, hey, focus on Oberon a little bit more if you have to, because you will get Koyanskaya 6 months later. I think the bigger, more interesting things with her is going to be that we don't know the banner timing of this on NA. Depending on how they handle the lotto, depending on how they handle anniversary, and depending on how they handle LB 6.3's timing, it might not happen like it did on JP. You might not have an overlap where you can roll Oberon and then roll Koyanskaya. Similarly, that might also mean you have more time in between rolling Koyanskaya and Oberon by which to save. I don't know. I can't answer those questions. This is definitely going to be a weird one, I think, for NA. So this one is going to be hotly debated, I'd say, for the next 6 months. After that point, we won't have to talk about it too much anymore. Again, remember, you do have pity. That's something JP didn't have for this. You also have the clairvoyance to be able to plan ahead. If you want to roll both, start saving now. That is the biggest warning I can give you. When we come back, I will deal with Koyanskaya's kit. But we're going to stop here, and I will talk about Koyanskaya and Oberon the next time we do banner review.